Welcome back, guys. This is the King of Weebs here, and like I've promised, this is a re-upload of part 1 of What If Naruto exploited the Shadow Clone Jutsu and became a god. I know the first one had a lot of problems, and a lot of the people who watched it really hated those editing errors. This time around, I made sure that there are no gaps in between the voice recordings or the voice notes. And anyways, hope you all enjoyed this What If. This was the King of Weebs here, and let's get straight into it. Obviously, let's not forget to give a little summary of the What If, like I usually do now. And also, I would like to shout out the creator. His name is Fajaz, and this is the rise of Naruto Uzumaki. After his confrontation with Mizuki, Naruto finds himself in the Hogake's office and determines it's time that he stops playing at being a ninja. Follow Naruto as he strives towards his dream of becoming the Hokage and unveils the truth of his past. Strong Naruto, not godlike Naruto. This is a Naruhina ship later on in the story. And anyways, this is his first fanfiction, so please read it and go review it. And anyways, now let's get right into it. Oh wait, right before we get into it, don't forget to join the Discord server, link in the description below. A little quick cheeky plug. Anyway, take care.
Chapter 1: Rising from Darkness. Naruto couldn't believe what had just happened. Not even an hour ago, he had been betrayed by one of his teachers. Mizuki team had tricked him into stealing the village's forbidden scroll, and then tried to kill him and Iruka-sensei. He didn't even want to think about the other thing Mizuki had told him about. But now he knew why everyone in the village hated him. He had a demon, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, sealed inside of him. He was relieved that Iruka had told him that he wasn't a demon himself. His world had come crashing down when Mizuki first told him, but Iruka said he believed in Naruto, and Naruto wasn't going to betray the trust Iruka-sensei had in him. I'm going to show those villagers that I'm not the Kyuubi. I'll make them acknowledge me. TT Abayo. Naruto, how are you feeling? The aging Hokage asked the boy. They had been sitting in the office for half an hour, and the boy hadn't spoken even once. I heard from the hospital a few moments ago. You don't need to worry, Naruto. Iruka is going to be fine. He is. Thank Kami, I was really worried. Naruto let out a breath that he hadn't even realized he'd been holding in. You'll be able to visit him tomorrow morning, Naruto, but for now we really need to talk about what you've been through. Naruto had expected this. He really didn't want to relive what had happened, but he knew he couldn't just imagine it hadn't happened. Just start at the beginning, Naruto. Explain everything that you remember. Naruto let out a sigh before starting. Okay, GG, I was sitting out in front of the academy after I failed my exam again, and watching the other kids show off their heat I ate to their families, when Mizuki-sensei came up to me and told me that there was a secret test that would let me pass the exam. Naruto hated himself looking back. He should have known that there wasn't any stupid test, but he just sighed and continued. Anyways, Mizuki-sensei told me that all I had to do to pass was sneak into your office, grab that stupid scroll, and meet up with him in the forest. Now it was the Hokage's turn to sigh. He figured this was how it started. He was disgusted that one of the teachers would abuse the trust of one of his students for something like that. Okay, Naruto, what happened next? Well, Naruto started chuckling. You should remember the next part. GG, I got in here and knocked you out with my Oirik no Jutsu. Naruto couldn't help but grin at that. He couldn't believe that the Hokage, the most powerful ninja in the village, had been taken out with his own original anti-pervert technique. As his chuckling stopped, he decided to continue. But anyways, the next thing I did was I grabbed that scroll and took off. I found my way to where Mizuki team said to meet him, but cause he wasn't there yet, I decided to take a look inside the scroll and saw it was full of Jutsu. Naruto, before you continue, I want to tell you that you're hereby forbidden from speaking about how you got the scroll, and I'm also going to Have you write everything you know about that technique into the forbidden scroll? You just want to know how to do it yourself, don't you, GG? Naruto accused jokingly, while narrowing his eyes at the old man. No, Naruto, that technique is obviously dangerous, as it was able to defeat me so easily. The fact is that there are a great many talented shinobi in this village that would fall prey to that technique, and as such, I am labeling it a forbidden technique. At this, Naruto cracked a small smirk. I wonder just how many perverts I could use this on to beat. Okay, GG, you win. I'll write it down in the scroll, but I'm not going to never use it again. What happens if I'm fighting some super pervert or something? And that's my best chance for beating him. And quat. Fine, Naruto, I won an R-pose. T forbid you from using it, but under no circumstances are you to go around teaching it to people. Now please continue with the story. And quat. This caused Naruto to become downcast again as he began speaking again. And quat. Okay, well, I opened the scroll, and the first thing I saw was another stupid clone technique, and because I always sucked at those I decided to look a bit more, but they all seemed so complicated, I just went back to it, and started trying to learn it, and quat. The Hokage and R-pose, jaw dropped at this, wondering just how far Naruto had managed to get on that jutsu. After all, it was a Jonin level technique. And quat. After a little while, Iruka-sensei showed up and started yelling at me for stealing the scroll, and when I told him Mizuki team told me about it, he started freaking out. Then all of a sudden Mizuki team showed up and started attacking us. And quat. Naruto took a deep breath, and seeing that the Hokage was about to interrupt him, he decided to finish the story, because he figured that if he stopped talking, he would in an R-pose be able to finish telling him the story. And quat. So then, Iruka-sensei told me to run and get away from the fight, which I did, but pretty soon Mizuki team caught up with me again, and he managed to get Iruka-sensei with a couple kunai and quat. At this point some tears started to flow from Naruto and R-pose's eyes, remembering his sensei getting all those wounds protecting him. And quat. Then Mizuki team told Emmy about the QB inside of Emmy and called me ADD demon, and then he said that even Iruka-sensei hated me. And quat. By this point Naruto was barely holding himself together, as he was gritting his teeth trying to hold back as many tears as he could as he was gripping tightly at his pants. And quat. And the next thing I knew, he was throwing one of his giant shuriken at me, and I couldn't an R-pose even move, but then, Iruka-sensei was there, and he got hit in the back with it. He told me that I wasn't an R-pose demon, and that the villagers were wrong about me. He told me that I was being a hero, keeping them safe every day just by keeping the QB inside me. And quat. Naruto could no longer hold back the tears, as they began flowing steadily down his face, dripping onto the floor in front of him. Then Mizuki team was insulting Iruka-sensei, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I used the new technique I learned and created like 1,000 clones, and kicked the teams. By this point Hiruzen Sarutobi couldn't hold back his shock, an academy student, using the Cage Bunshin, an academy student creating 1,000 clones, he couldn't hold himself back anymore. You learned the Cage Bunshin no Jutsu in one night, and then you made 1,000 clones. That's impossible, Naruto, not even the Yondawa learnt it that quickly. How did you manage that so easily, and how are you not dead from chakra exhaustion? The Sarutobi was skeptical at the thought of it. A genin, mastering a Jonin level technique in under an hour, it was unheard of. Naruto was surprised by the Sandaim's reaction. After all, it wasn't that difficult to learn, but upon hearing that he had mastered a Jonin level technique, he was pulled out of his depressed slump. He wasn't bouncing around, but he'd probably do that later. Take that everyone, the class Dobi mastered a forbidden Jonin level technique, and didn't even get in trouble for it. Actually GG, I was kinda shocked how easy it was. I mean, I've always sucked at the Academy Bunshin, and no matter how much chakra I pumped into them they'd always turn out sickly, but with these, I barely needed to use any chakra and they turned out awesome. By now Sarutobi's mind was searching for some way to explain this occurrence. The only thing that would make sense is if the boy has an impossibly high chakra reserve. Barker, Okami, how did I not realize before? As an Uzumaki he was bound to have abnormally high chakra reserves, and on top of that he does have a demon that is essentially a giant mass of chakra sealed inside of him. Wait, if he's got that much chakra, then there's something else I need to test. Okay Naruto, I think I know why you've been having so much trouble with the Academy Jutsus, but before I explain, I would like you to perform the 3 standard Academy Jutsu. Naruto was a bit confused, but he slowly made his way to his feet with the Hokage, who walked around his desk to stand in front of Naruto. Alright, Naruto, I want you to try use the Henge no Jutsu to look like the scroll. Can you do that, Naruto? Naruto was surprised he was being asked to do something so simple, so he quickly went through hand signs. Henge no Jutsu, Sarutobi was shocked when the puff of smoke cleared, and he was staring down at an exact duplicate of the village's forbidden scroll. He reached down, and slowly picked up the scroll, examining it, with a shocked expression on his face. He placed the scroll back on the ground and asked Naruto to return to normal, and with a puff of smoke Naruto was back. It seems like my suspicions may be correct. Okay Naruto, I would now like you to use the Karimi no Jutsu to replace yourself with me. Hiruzen made sure he spoke calmly, so as not to suggest something may be unusual about his request. Naruto, once again surprised by the odd request, went through the necessary hand signs. Karimi no Jutsu. He was once again engulfed in a small puff of smoke, and when the Hokage looked up, he saw Naruto leaning against his desk smiling slightly. Well, that answers that. He was able to switch places with me. The only people able to do that should be the other cages. Very good Naruto, now please, the Bunshin. At this point Naruto began to feel worried. No, why does Gigi need to see the Bunshin? I've never been able to do that one. Naruto in a very downcast manner, went through the hand seals. Bunshin no Jutsu. To Naruto's dismay, a pair of sickly looking clones appeared at his feet. Looking thoroughly dejected, he dispelled the clones, and turned to look up at the aging Hokage, surprised to see him with a large smile on his face. Now Naruto, if you would please, show me the cage Bunshin. Just show me how many you can make in this room. He was positive that his assumptions were right. He just couldn't resist the opportunity, seeing this would give him to praise his surrogate grandson. He knew how much the boy suffered, and wished he could have done more, but he knew the praise would help the boy out. Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. All of a sudden the room was filled with a plume of smoke, and when the smoke cleared, the Hokage couldn't hold the shocked expression off of his face. Surrounding him, literally wall to wall, were Naruto's. He even saw some on top of his shelves, and saw them all squirming for room. By this point in time, the Hokage was beaming. He was immensely proud of Naruto. Naruto, dispel them and have a seat again. I'd like to talk to you about your techniques. Naruto was a bit worried about this, but seeing his surrogate grandfather's smile told him that at least he wasn't in trouble, so he dispelled the clones, feeling a small headache coming on, and settled down in the chair in front of the desk. Well, Naruto, today has proved to be a very interesting day, hasn't it? First you steal a forbidden scroll, then you stop a traitor, and now I find you've mastered 3 Jonin level techniques before graduating the academy. If it wasn't for the fact that the graduation exams were over, I'd probably have to make you Rookie of the Year. Sadly, it's too late for that. GG, what do you mean 3 Jonin techniques? 2 of them were just the academy ones. To say Naruto was slightly confused was an understatement. But thankfully, he saw the Hokage was still smiling, and he had a feeling that he'd find out what the Hokage meant. Naruto, those 2 are academy techniques, but you've been using them at a Jonin level. If you paid more attention in class you'd know that the Henge is supposed to be a genjutsu, and just make you appear as something else. What you've been doing is actually a full transformation technique, which makes it Jonin level. And as for your Karimi, normally somebody your age shouldn't be able to even switch themselves with another person. The fact that you could switch places with me means your chakra reserves surpass even mine, and I'm the Hokage. But GG, if I've got so much chakra, how come I can't even do the Bunshin? That's simple Naruto, you just have too much chakra for it. Your clones always turn out sickly, because they are overcharged and the amount of chakra you put into them quite literally kills them. The Hokage couldn't help but smirk at the young blonde's expression. The boy was opening and closing his mouth, trying to figure out something to say, but the words were obviously eluding him. Now Naruto, I need to tell you something about the Cage Bunshin that should help you with your training over the next 3 months before we have the Genin team announcements. Now that Naruto had gotten his mouth to stop opening and closing, he looked back at his surrogate grandfather. I wonder what my super cool jutsu can do. I've got to get really strong before I get on my team. I hope it'll help. Naruto thought desperately. Naruto, there are 2 reasons the Cage Bunshin is a forbidden technique. The first being that it requires a lot of chakra to use efficiently. In fact, it requires so much that most shinobi under the rank of Jonin can't even create 2 without passing out from chakra exhaustion. The second is because of the mental and physical stress it causes on the user. Do you mean that's why my head hurts a bit after I use it? GG, cause I was wondering about that. Yes Naruto, the Cage Bunshin causes mental stress, because everything your clones experience gets transferred to you. Sighing slightly at the boy's confusion, he spoke again. Naruto, what I mean is that when your clones learn something you learn it too. And before you interrupt me asking what I mean, let me just give you a demonstration. Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. With that, an exact duplicate appeared next to the Hokage, and the clone instructed Naruto to create a clone as well. Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. Okay Naruto, now our clones are going to step out of the room for a moment and then dispel. I think that'll help you understand what I mean. The Sandemi was smirking at the look of confusion on Naruto's face as he watched the clones leave the room, and a second later, he felt his head tingle. GG, when we getting that rain? Wait, how do I know you said you'd buy my ramen? The aging Hokage just stood there waiting for Naruto to figure it out, and after a few minutes, he saw Naruto's face light up. Oh, I get it, so if my clones learn something I can learn it too. Ah man, this is gonna be so awesome. I'm going to get so strong with this stuff. Just you wait old man, I'll get that hat from you sooner than you think TKoW. Naruto had a giant grin plastered across his face at the thought of sitting behind the Hokage desk in the robes and hat, and got more and more excited at the idea of being the one handing out orders and having everyone respect him. The Sandemi couldn't help but smirk in his mind at this. He knew that Naruto would jump at this opportunity, even if the boy didn't like reading. The thoughts of all those techniques would override his dislike for studying, and with the mention of the shinobi records, the boy would without a doubt search through the records for some sort of family, especially since he told the boy years ago that his parents had been shinobi who died in service of the village. Naruto was in deep thought by now. Maybe the old man is messing with me. I mean, going to the library to get stronger. Sounds crazy. Maybe his age is getting to him. I guess I could send some clones to look if there's any cool stuff there, and maybe the records could tell me something about my parents. I mean GG did say they were shinobi. Okay, I'll go look at the library for some cool techniques. Say old man, what do you think I should look for in the library? Well, off the top of my head, I'd say you need to get a book on chakra control, and maybe look into some shinobi tactics, and if you're serious about taking my hat someday, you should look into some history books as well as some of the shinobi laws, because you need to know all that to be Hokage. But GG, that's all so boring. Well then why don't you make your clones do the reading, while you go train? It's all information you should know, so if it's too tedious to do yourself, then just send your clones to do it. Naruto thought about it for a minute, and decided that if he had to know it, he might as well put the clones to use, and make them study the boring stuff, and he could go do some cool training. Wait a minute, if I can just do that, then why don't any other shinobi use clones to do all that stupid, boring stuff? Hey GG, if I can use my clones for that, then why don't you just use them to do all that paperwork? That's what I'll do when I'm Hokage. I don't want to be sitting around all day when I can be off showing everyone how badass I am. TKoW. The Hokage's secretary didn't know how to react to what she had just seen. She decided to shrug off the young shinobi's antics, and was back to herself helping the all 10 Narutos organize the paperwork for the Hokage. I know Sandemi-sama is going to get upset when he sees all this paperwork. Naruto and Chizuru chatted for a couple minutes as the clones brought in the last of the paperwork. Well, Naruto chatted about all the cool things he was hoping to learn, while Chizuru listened. Soon it was around 9 in the morning, and the aging Hokage strolled into the room. He saw Naruto and his longtime secretary Chizuru chatting, and then his eyes fell upon the recently placed mountain of paperwork sitting on his desk. Well, it seems that we meet again, my dreaded mortal enemy. Yesterday I would have nearly cried seeing you piled so high, but I now know your weakness. You shall never darken my dreams again. Ha. Good morning Chizuru-san. Naruto. Morning GG. Chizuru was confused. She had seen the Hokage's eyes when he looked at his paperwork, and couldn't believe what she had seen. What's going on? He doesn't even look fazed by the paperwork, and I know for a fact it's more than double what was there yesterday. However, she realized that she hadn't even responded to the Hokage's greeting yet and quickly composed herself. Good morning Hokage-sama, is there anything you need this morning, or would you prefer I just let you get started? The Hokages couldn't help but grin wider when he realized what caused his secretary's confusion, and decided to play it up a bit. Well, I wouldn't mind some tea to start off the day, as well as a glass of milk for Naruto. We have some things planned for today, and we'd like to be off as soon as possible. Now his secretary's face was in shock. The Hokage was planning on leaving the office with all the paperwork piled on his desk. She nodded dumbly and decided she needed to get her thoughts straight. Maybe the Hokage was just feeling a bit under the weather today. After all, what else could explain his planning to leave the office right after he arrived? Naruto watched the secretary leave, and didn't really understand her expression, so as soon as she had left the office and closed the door he turned to the Hokage. GG, what was with Chizuru? I mean, she's usually really strict, but she looked kinda weird when she just left. Well Naruto, Chizuru has been my secretary for a long time, almost 6 years now actually, and for the first time the paperwork didn't even bother me, so she's probably just shocked by this, but don't let that trouble you Naruto. The Hokage was chuckling by now. Anyhow, after Chizuru-san gets back with some tea and milk, we'll head out and I'll treat you to breakfast before picking you up some chakra weights and showing you the shinobi library. This brought Naruto's attention back around, and though he was excited for getting the chakra weights, he still wasn't looking forward to the library. Sure, I'm not personally going to be reading all those stupid history books and law stuff, but I'm still gonna have to remember all of it. Maybe I'll do what GG suggested, and get a book on chakra control or something like that, and have a bunch of clones working on that. At least that way I'll get a bit stronger with them. Naruto left his interior monologue to see the Hokage standing at the window, smiling while looking out over the city. What are you looking at, GG? Sarutobi was just enjoying the peaceful morning, and was musing over what he should do with all the time he was going to have to himself again now that he wouldn't have to spend every minute of every day behind those piles of paperwork, and turned away from the window at Naruto's question. I have been debating what I should do with my time now that thanks to your idea I don't have to be behind that desk all day. I was thinking about spending more time visiting the academy, and maybe just spending more time walking around the village, and talking with the civilians, but I still feel like if I don't have a lot to do, I'll just end up back here, doing paperwork. Well GG, why don't you train more then? I know you're supposed to be the strongest and everything, cause you're Hokage, but that doesn't mean you can't get stronger, does it? The Hokage was slightly shocked at the idea, once again wondering how he hadn't thought of it. Sure, he was getting close to 70, but back in his youth he had been dubbed Kami no Shinobi, he had been considered the strongest Hokage, and as much as he hated to admit it, he had grown weaker over the years. Just remembering the last time he had summoned Enma, they had been talking about how long it had been since they had a fight, or even just a spar. Well, it couldn't hurt to get back in a state where I can fight again. I won't be able to get back to my prime, but what I lack in vitality, I could make up for in experience. There's no downside I can see, and I have always regretted letting my condition slide, and now that I don't have to worry about the paperwork, there isn't anything that will be in my way. Thank you for that, Naruto. I think I'll follow your suggestion. After all, it wouldn't be good for the village if their Hokage was seen as getting weak, would it? Naruto didn't respond, he just smiled up at his surrogate grandfather, glad that he could be of help again. So they just both turned to the window again, and waited in silence for a few minutes. Being quiet wasn't Naruto's favorite way of spending time, but he decided to use this time to figure out how he wanted to use his clones for the next little while, at least while they were in the library. So the silence continued for several minutes until it was broken by a knock on the office door. Come in, Chizuru. Naruto and the Hokage turned around and watched as Chizuru walked in, bowed briefly and then turned to make her way out. As she got to the door, however, the Hokage spoke again. Thank you, Chizuru. Could you make sure my schedule is clear till the afternoon? I'll be back in briefly then to make sure everything is alright. Of course, Hokage-sama, if that's what you would like. Chizuru was almost sure of it. The Hokage must be feeling ill if he was going to go through with his plan of leaving all the paperwork behind, but sighing slightly she figured that he would make up for it the next day, even if he had to come in early. She barely noticed Naruto's thanks, and merely waved a hand at him, to show it wasn't a worry. Then she made her way to her desk outside the office and sat down, and got to her own paperwork. Back inside the office, the elder man and the young boy were enjoying their drinks and discussing where to go for breakfast, because it was rare for them to spend much time together. Naruto, of course being Naruto, suggested Ichiraku ramen, which the Hokage shot down. Naruto, I know how much you love ramen, but you need to eat more healthy foods as well. You won't get all the nutrition you need if you only eat ramen. But GG, ramen is the food of the gods. How can you say I'm not getting everything I need? I'm great, and I've never gotten sick from eating ramen. Naruto, you don't have to stop eating ramen, but if you want to be a strong shinobi you need to eat healthier, and if being healthy isn't enough, I can promise you adding some variety to what you eat, and eating healthier won't hurt your growth. If you don't have variety in what you eat, you're not getting all the nutritional value you should, and that makes it take longer for you to grow. At this, Naruto's objections were cut off. His height was a sore spot for him. He really didn't like how he was one of the shortest people in his class, and he quickly, if extremely dejectedly, decided that if he had to give up ramen a couple days a week to help him get taller, then he would. Okay GG, you win, no ramen, but if we're not going to Ichiraku's, where are we gonna go? Not a lot of places let me in, cause of the TKoW. Sarutobi sighed at this. He hated how the villagers would get around his law regarding Naruto containing the TKoW, and how he would be kicked out of a lot of the shops in Konoha. Well, don't worry about that, Naruto, you're with me today, and nowhere in the village would they dare turn you away when you're with me, so that's not an issue, and when we go get your weights I'll take you to a store that an old friend of mine owns. I know that they'll be more than happy for your business. Really GG? That'll be awesome. Okay, let's go then. 1 minute, Naruto, I still need to do my paperwork. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. With a puff of smoke, 4 clones of the Hokage went behind the desk and started dividing up the paperwork. Now remember, once I'm gone, put up a privacy barrier, so this stays a secret. We can't have Naruto's idea leaked out to everyone, can we? Also make sure you read every single report. We can do that now. If you need to, you can each create another clone. But make sure that by the time I get back that we're at least halfway through all these piles. After addressing the clones, the Hokage led Naruto out of the office and closed the door behind them. The Hokage couldn't help but smirk again as he said his farewells to his secretary again, and made his way out of the tower. Out in the streets of Konoha, the Hokage and Naruto were making their way to a small family-owned restaurant that the Hokage had frequented often during the time where the Yondawa had reigned. He hadn't been there in a little over a year now, seeing as it was rare for him to have any spare time in the mornings, but he had told Naruto that it was a very nice restaurant focusing on cuisine from all across the elemental nations, even having some dishes that originated outside of the elemental nations. Needless to say, Naruto was excited at the prospect of all the new food he could try, and he figured that if the people who owned the restaurant were friends with his surrogate grandfather, that they might let him come back on his own as well. He'd have to remember to ask the old man if he could do anything about it. As they were walking, the Hokage could see the stares the villagers were directing at Naruto. He couldn't understand how the village could look at Naruto this way. The Yondawa Hokage was regarded as a hero. He was one of the most talented shinobi to ever be born. He couldn't understand how the village could have placed so much faith in his skills during his life, and how they could have so little faith in the seal he designed for Naruto. Minato, you must be rolling over in your grave watching how the villagers are going against your last wish. If you or Kushina were still here, this never would have happened. I'm sorry I've failed you both so completely when it comes to your son. The Hokage glanced towards Naruto, and he saw the look in Naruto's eyes. He knew Naruto had noticed the stares he received, and he couldn't deny that he was worried how the boy would react now that he knew the reason behind the stares. Naruto was deep in thought. He finally knew why the villagers all hated him, and it only strengthened his resolve to get their acknowledgement. Just you wait, I'm going to be the most kick-ass ninja you've ever seen, then you will all have to acknowledge me, TKoW. Naruto noticed that the Hokage was watching him with a worried expression, and turned to the old man and smiled. Don't worry GG, I can ignore them. I've been doing it as long as I can remember. Let's just get some food, I'm starving. The old man could tell that the boy was hiding his true emotions, but he sighed knowing that it was the blonde's way of coping. He understood that it was also the reason the boy would play all the pranks he did. The boy just wanted some attention, and even if it wasn't good attention, any attention was better than the hate-filled glares he usually received. Making one more turn, the Hokage led Naruto through the entryway of a nice-looking restaurant called Yaoke Shikudo. Naruto was slightly apprehensive walking in, but seeing the surprised and happy looks the old man was getting, he figured he'd be fine. He still noticed some of the diners giving him looks, but paid them no mind. Hokage-sama, good morning, it's great to see you, you visited us in ages. Naruto looked up, and saw a man who looked a bit older than Iruka walk up to the Hokage and bow to him. Ah, hello Kenji-san, is your father in this morning? I'd like to talk to him if he had some free time. Naruto just watched the two adults talk, and noticed that though the younger of the two men gave him a look, it wasn't filled with hate, more so just curiosity, so he decided he'd give the man the benefit of the doubt for now. Of course he's here Hokage-sama, I'll go grab him for you, but for now, you and your guest can take a seat. We have a few tables open, so feel free to seat yourself and I'll be right back with my old man. And with a smirk the man was off, and the Hokage was leading Naruto to a table near the front window. Hey Gigi, who was that? I thought you said an old friend of yours owned this place. That guy was maybe a couple years older than Iruka-sensei. Ah, yes you are right Naruto, that was Yaoke Kenji, his father Rojin owns this restaurant, and don't worry, Rojin-san is almost as old as I am. At this time Naruto noticed the man named Kenji come back out from the back of the restaurant with an old man, who Naruto could only assume was Rojin. Hiruzen, how have you been doing? Naruto was shocked at this. He heard a few people call the Hokage by his last name before, but they always used honorifics at least. This guy must be a really old friend to just call the Hokage by his first name. Rojin, it is good to see you, it has been a while. The Hokage was smiling warmly at the other old man. By the way Rojin, Kenji, this is Uzumaki Naruto, I was taking him out for breakfast, and found he'd never been here before, so I took the liberty to bring him along. I've spoken very highly of your food. At this the two men looked at Naruto, and surprising Naruto they smiled at him. Hello Uzumaki-san, I'm Kenji, and this is my father's restaurant. It is nice to meet you Uzumaki-san. Any friend of Hiruzen's is a friend of mine, and is always welcome in my restaurant. Naruto's shock at these greetings were clearly plastered on his face. What? Naruto took a minute to figure out that he was supposed to respond and somewhat shakily turned to the two men. Thanks, it's nice to meet you as well. Still in a state of something near shock, Naruto wasn't paying attention to what the three adults were talking about, until once again Kenji turned back to him. So Uzumaki-san, have you decided what you'd like to have? At this Naruto was slightly shocked. He hadn't even realized he'd opened the menu. He certainly hadn't been reading it. I think Naruto will have the extra large breakfast special. At this, Naruto looked up at the Hokage and slowly nodded. Yeah, sure, I'll have what Gigi suggested. Could I also get some milk too? Of course, Uzumaki-san, I'll be back with your drink in a minute. Your meal will take a little longer, so just ask me if you need anything. Naruto just nodded dumbly again, and started fiddling with his hands. He wasn't really paying any attention to the conversation the two old men were having. He picked up bits, but it seemed like they were just talking about when they were both young, something he had noticed that all older people tended to do. Well, it was nice to meet you again, Uzumaki-san, but I should really get back into the kitchen. I just want you to know that you're always welcome in here. Enjoy your meal, Uzumaki-san. Hiruzen. Naruto waited another minute or so after the man left before turning back to his surrogate grandfather. Okay, Gigi, what's with those two? Why they being all nice to me? The Hokage sighed at this, not really blaming the boy for his distrust. Naruto, Rojin is a very old friend of mine, and I have known his son Kenji since the day he was born. You have nothing to worry about from them. I'm positive that they'll accept you just as much as Chuchi and Ayami do. So I'd recommend just enjoying your meal, and if you enjoy it, I'd recommend you come back and get to know them some more. Naruto and the Hokage spent the rest of their time at the restaurant talking about Naruto's training. The Hokage even came up with an idea to help convince Naruto to take the readings he suggested seriously. Because Naruto had been told not to eat ramen all the time, the old man had decided that at the end of each week he would buy Naruto a bowl of ramen from Ichiraku for every book he read. Naruto wasn't entirely sure how to feel about the agreement. He was unhappy he'd only get ramen once a week, but on the other hand, he figured with his clones he'd be able to read easily 20 books a week, though he wasn't happy that the Hokage said he would be tested on his knowledge of the books by Iruka-sensei. But, seeing as Naruto had never been one to go back on an agreement, he decided he'd just have to make the most out of it, and he figured it wouldn't be a bad thing to get smarter. After the two finished their meals, which the Hokage insisted on paying for as long as Naruto promised to work hard on his training, they left to visit Iruka in the hospital. All in all, Naruto had been enjoying the day so far. It was nearly noon, they were just getting to the hospital. The Hokage and Naruto made their way to Iruka's room, and after being invited in after knocking, the two made their way inside. Hokage-sama, Naruto, what are you two doing here? Good day, Iruka-san. How are you feeling? Yeah, you okay, Iruka-sensei? I'm fine, Naruto. Hokage-sama, thank you both for your concern. So how are you doing, Naruto? Are you feeling okay after what you went through last night? Naruto felt his eyes water at that. Iruka was one of the few people who had acknowledged him, and had gotten pretty badly injured during Mizuki's attempt to steal the scroll, and he was asking how he was feeling. I'm sorry, Iruka-sensei, if I was a better ninja neither of us would have gotten hurt. Naruto held back his watering eyes, and just told Iruka that he was fine. Though Iruka could tell that Naruto was still having trouble dealing with everything he had learned, he decided not to pressure the young blonde into speaking about it until he was comfortable with it. So Iruka decided to lie back and let Naruto talk. He was surprised when Naruto told him about the jutsus he'd been using at the academy, and apologized to the boy for not noticing the cause of his issues himself, and continued cursing himself for the next little while, as Naruto went into talking about the training he was going to do for the next few months. He was shocked to hear that Naruto was going to study the shinobi history and laws, but he readily agreed to test Naruto at the end of each week on his knowledge. He was even more shocked to hear that Naruto was only going to eat ramen once a week. The idea of Naruto eating food other than ramen was hard to imagine, but he was mentally praising the Hokage for his ingenious method of convincing Naruto not to cheat on his healthier diet by offering to buy him the ramen himself. He was also very pleased to hear that Naruto was planning on working on chakra control, because after finding out how much chakra the blonde had, he figured it would take him a lot of work to get his control up. Sadly for the visiting group, due to the fact that Iruka's injuries weren't fully recovered, a nurse broke up the group's visit after an hour or so, and though she apologized profusely to the Hokage for having to ask them to leave, she still did insist. As the two were about to leave, Naruto turned around in the doorway and Iruka could see the boy was holding back tears for some reason. I'm sorry, Iruka-sensei, I promise I'll get stronger, so you don't get hurt protecting me again. I'll get strong enough to make you proud of me. Iruka was stunned by this. He knew that Naruto would be upset over everything he had found out, but this was more than Iruka would stand for. Naruto, it's not your fault I got hurt. I'm a shinobi, it's in the job description, so don't worry about it, and I look forward to you getting stronger, but you should know I'm already very proud of you for how far you've come. This being more than Naruto wanted to deal with at the moment, prompted him to quickly turn around and exit the room following after the Hokage. It was now in the early afternoon and Naruto was following as the Hokage led towards the Shinobi Library. After his discussion with Iruka he was feeling oddly reflective. "Hey GG, do you think I can become a great shinobi someday?" "What do you mean, Naruto?" "Well, if I was really as awesome of a ninja as I say I am, Iruka-sensei wouldn't have gotten hurt, so I am going to have to get stronger so that I'll be able to protect everybody important to me. So do you think I could ever become a great shinobi like the Yondawa?" At this the Hokage could only think of how proud the young blonde's parents would be of their son. It seems like Naruto is finally taking his ninja career seriously. "Minato, Kushina, you would be so proud of how much your son has grown." "Naruto, I believe that one day you could be one of the most powerful shinobi in the entire world. You just have to remember that you will only ever get as strong as you want if you have something precious to you that you are getting stronger to protect." "What do you mean something precious to protect, GG?" "Naruto, every truly great ninja has something, or someone that is precious to them to protect. It is for the precious people that they get stronger. Just look at the Yondawa, he gave his life to protect this village, because this village was precious to him. If you want to become truly strong you need to have something or someone to protect." Naruto was silent for a few minutes, trying to think of people that were precious to him. "Well, I know I'd want to protect the people from Ichiraku, Chuchi and Naomi, then there's Iruka-sensei, he's already gotten hurt, cause I wasn't strong enough, and even if GG is really strong, I don't want him getting hurt. Maybe one day I can be like the Yondawa and fight for everyone in the village. That sounds something I'd like doing, standing up for everyone, even the people who have treated me bad. What better way is there to show them that I'm not a monster?" With this, Naruto's resolve to become stronger was reaffirmed, and he turned back to his surrogate grandfather. "GG, one day I'm going to be like the Yondawa, one day I'll be the one to protect this village, then everyone will have to acknowledge me." Naruto had a bright smile plastered on his face again, not the smile he wore to mask his pain, but a true smile, showing the passion and conviction he had in his words. The Hokage was beaming at the boy. "I know you will, Naruto, now let's get to the library, and then you can get started on your work." The two made the rest of the trip to the library in silence, and once they arrived the Hokage took a moment to show Naruto around, and asked him to come by the office at the end of the day to pick up the weights he had promised to buy the boy. Naruto was a bit disappointed that the old man would be leaving him at the library, but before he left he found Naruto a book on chakra control, and suggested he set a dozen clones to reading through what they discussed earlier, and he could go and work on chakra control himself. Naruto had finally finished browsing through the library and decided it was time that he get out of there and start working on his chakra control. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, after the smoke caused by the technique died down, and he was yelled at by the librarian for yelling in the library, which Naruto found kind of silly. He turned back to face the 30 clones he had just created. "Okay men, you're going to break up into 3 groups, 15 of you are going to read in the shinobi history section, 14 are going to be reading up on the laws, and you," he said pointing at one clone in the center of the bunch, "are going to be reading up on the shinobi records. You all know what is at stake if you don't take this seriously and we'll end up suffering from a case of ramen deficit disorder, so get to work, and try not to bug the librarian, so no yelling." "You got it, boss," all the clones chanted back in restrained voices. After leaving his clones back in the library Naruto decided to head to training ground 41, he'd come across it back in his early academy days, and had been looking for a private place to practice. It was essentially a small clearing in one of the forests inside the village walls. There were a few training posts in the center, and there was a relatively small body of water just outside the clearing. Sadly Wen had stumbled into a few shinobi training, and they had told him that the training area could only be used by shinobi, but now he was able to use it, and no one could say anything against it. Naruto arrived in the clearing and found it empty. He decided he'd do a quick stretch, and a warm-up run, and then get started, so he summoned a clone to start reading up the chakra control exercises. After doing his stretches and 2 laps around the clearing he walked back towards the clone and dispelled it. After feeling the rush of info, he quickly became frustrated that the clone hadn't even gotten beyond the book's introduction, so he sat down himself, and spent the next 20 minutes reading through the first chapter, and though he was disheartened at learning the first exercise was the leaf balancing exercise from the academy, he decided if he was going to do the work from the book, he would do it properly. He quickly created 200 clones and instructed them to grab leaves and work on keeping them stuck to their foreheads, and once they were done that, they were to work on spinning them. After instructing the clones he summoned another clone to help him with the workouts he was going to be doing. Deciding that he might go easy if he just did what he felt was okay, he instructed the clone to come up with the most brutal workout that he would be able to do, and after a few minutes, the clone instructor directed him to do 5 sets of 200 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, 100 chin-ups, 100 squats, and 100 lunges, followed by 100 punches each hand, and 100 kicks each foot. Each set would be followed by 5 laps around the training area. After hearing this, Naruto cursed his clone, and dispelled him with a punch to the face, which he quickly regretted getting the memory of how the punch felt back. OWW, damn, maybe don't attack my own clones, it only ends up hurting me. Well anyways, I guess I should get started if I'm going to be able to drop by the Hokage Tower before it gets too late. After all, I'm still going to need dinner. At this, Naruto began his training. It was around the start of the 3rd set that he was once again cursing his clone, and realized that he didn't have any food at his house besides ramen, and started panicking about what he was going to do until he came up with the idea of getting a clone to go buy groceries for him after using the Henge no Jutsu. After sending off the now disguised Naruto clone with instructions to buy healthy stuff, he grudgingly got back to work. Chapter 3: The Road to Strength. Naruto woke up with a start. Where am I? Naruto was about to panic, when he realized that he was very familiar with the room he had been lying in. He was once again in his surrogate grandfather's office. Now that that question was answered, he became aware that he had a rather painful headache. He got up off the couch, and made his way towards the window. He quickly regretted this when his legs buckled underneath him at his first step. Damn it, I guess the workout my clone made me do wasn't such a good idea after all. Hey wait, speaking of my clones, I need to figure out how much my clones at the library read. At this, Naruto began trying to figure out what he had learned. He tried thinking about the history of the village, and dozens of memories came to him, realizing that he had learned a lot about the founding of the village, as well as the founding clans. He congratulated himself. Though he did file in his mind that he was going to have to study more into the individual clans, he always knew that Sasuke was a team, but he hadn't thought almost all of the Uchiha clan had been a group of jerks. Struggling to his feet, he slowly made his way to the window in the office, and pulled open the blinds. Looking out on the streets of the village, he saw that it was just after dawn, so he decided to make his way back to the couch. Sitting down, he was working on remembering how he got back to the Hokage's office. He remembered being halfway through the 5th set of his workout the night before. Flashback: Naruto was lying on the ground panting. In fact, panting was what he had been doing for the past 2 hours. His body was screaming in protest at any of his attempts to move, but he was determined to finish his workout. It was getting dark now, and he was getting worried if he didn't an R-pose. Finish up so on the Hokage would leave the office for the night, and he didn't an R-pose. Want to make his surrogate grandfather wait for him, so with a loud groan of protester pushed himself up off the ground, and made his way to finish the workout. He didn't an R-pose. Know how he did it, but he finished, and even managed to push through the run. He left the clearing heading towards the Hokage Tower, completely forgetting about the clones that were lying around the forest practicing the leaf balancing exercise, and dragged himself to the Hokage Tower. It was well after sunset by the time he was climbing up the stairs, and he was in sight of Chizuru and Arpo's desk, when he remembered his clones at the library, and made the hand sign to dispel them. He thought he heard Chizuru say something when his world went black. Flashback end: as Naruto sat on the couch, he thought back to why the Hokage had told him that the Kage Bunshin was dangerous. And quote, Barker, I did an R-pose. Think about how I get all the exhaustion they get as well. Ugh, oh man, I totally did an R-pose. Even bother thinking about the hundreds of clones that I left back at the training ground when I dispelled them. No wonder I was out. I must have used up like all my chakra. Weird, I an R-pose. Never done that before. Still, I wonder how long I an R-pose been out for. And quote. Naruto decided that because his head was still bothering him, he'd lie back down and wait for the Hokage or Chizuru to come by so they could tell him how long he'd been out. He remembered Iruka-sensei telling him about how chakra exhaustion could leave you unconscious for more than a week if it was bad enough, and he figured he had a bad case of it. Wait a minute, since when do I remember all of Iruka-sensei's boring lectures? I guess I must have read something about it in the books I was reading. Actually, I think I'm going to need to rethink my way of getting my clones to read for me. Judging from how much my head is hurting, I don't think it's a good idea to try and absorb all the things they read at the same time. I guess for now I'll just get him to dispel every time they finish a book. I think that'd work. At this, Naruto allowed himself to drift back off into a dreamless sleep. About 3 hours later, the Hokage was making his way towards his office. He hated leaving Naruto there overnight, but at that time he decided that He'd just let Naruto sleep off his exhaustion in the office. He figured with how quickly Naruto healed, even a case of chakra exhaustion wouldn't keep him down for more than a day. Speaking of days, Hiruzen was looking forward to this one. For the first time in years, he was going to go to his private training ground and start working on honing his skills and trying to get them back to what they once were. He decided he'd spend some time in the office in the early morning in case Naruto woke up early, and then around noon head out himself. He had picked up the chakra weights himself yesterday, but he hadn't given them to the boy because he had been brought into his office by his worried secretary. The Hokage was heading up the staircase thinking about all the paperwork he had gotten through the day before. He couldn't help but congratulate himself, reflecting on how he had finally conquered his nemesis. Unfortunately, he had noticed some severe problems with a lot of the papers brought to him by the civilian council. He was aware that since he had retaken the mantle of Hokage after the Yondawa died sealing the QB, he had allowed the civilian council to gain more power than they used to have, but upon getting the memories back from all the paperwork, he was shocked to see how bold they had become in the demands they made. He resolved that he was going to remind him that Konohagakure no Sato was a shinobi village, and as such it was essentially a military dictatorship. He was upset that he had allowed himself to become so lax that they could grasp so much power. He told himself that he was going to have to look into the financial matters of the village much more carefully to see just how far they had dared go. They took advantage of my old age, but no more. I will remind them why I was called Kami no Shinobi. They aren't going to get away with this anymore. In fact, I think I'm going to leave behind a dozen clones today, just to ensure that I can read everything they try and demand carefully. I've acted lazily for too long. I'll have to gather as much evidence before I make my move against the civilian council. I just hope Danzo doesn't try and get in my way. He greeted Chizuru with a smile, and made his way into his office to see a quietly sleeping Naruto lying on the couch, and a massive pile of paperwork on his desk. The Hokage sighed and took his place behind his desk. He decided he'd sort through the piles before assigning the work to his clones. He knew he would still need to attend all the meetings, but he couldn't help but smirk at the thought of how the civilian council was going to react to him taking a more dominant role in the meetings. He couldn't even begin to imagine how much they had managed to slip past him in the past 12.5 years, but it wasn't going to be happening anymore. No, he would remind the council why he was the Hokage. However, there was one thing on his mind that he decided he should make a priority: the Uzumaki vault. Kushina had thankfully had the foresight to seal all of the Uzumaki scrolls she had in a storage scroll locked with a blood seal that would only open for Naruto, but the Uzumaki vault was in one of the older banks of the village, and it held all the family's wealth he had forgotten about in the early years of Naruto's life, while he was fending off Danzo's attempts to get a hold of Naruto to make his a weapon. He couldn't believe he had forgotten about them, but he had to make sure that Naruto's inheritance, at least from his mother, was still safe. After spending around half an hour sorting his paperwork, the sleeping blonde on the couch drew his attention. At this point, Naruto was waking up, and as he wiped the sleep away from his eyes, he turned to see the top of his surrogate grandfather's head looking at him from behind a giant pile of paperwork. "Hey Gigi, why are you doing all that paperwork? Weren't you going to get your Kage Bunshin to do it for you?" "Ah, Naruto, you're up." "Yes, I am going to be having my clones do all the paperwork. I just wanted to sort through it while waiting for you to get up." "Oh, that makes sense, I guess. So how long was I out?" Naruto was worried he might have been out for a week, and was worried about losing the time from his training. Thankfully, he needn't have worried. "You've been asleep since last night. Even I'm slightly shocked by how quickly you've recovered, but then again, I've always believed that your unnaturally high healing rate was caused by the QB's chakra being present in you." Naruto was slightly shocked to hear that his quick healing was caused by a giant demon, and wasn't slow to mention this. "Are you kidding, old man? Are you saying that the stupid fox is good for something?" "Well, Naruto, as sorry as I am to say it, the QB has done a better job keeping you alive than a good many of the Anbu of this village." At this, the Hokage hung his head in shame, thinking back to all of Naruto's hospital visits, because some drunk villagers, or on occasion shinobi, would stumble upon Naruto, and would cause riots trying to get the revenge on the demon. Naruto was thinking back to some of the times he'd ended up in the hospital, and some of the injuries he'd gotten from the mobs that would chase him, and he remembered some of the shinobi that he had read about in the records, and he recalled that some of his wounds had been comparably worse than the wounds that had killed quite a few veteran shinobi. "GG, are you saying that if it wasn't for the QB I'd be dead?" The Hokage, who was still staring down at his desk, slowly looked back up into the young blonde's eyes. "He's so innocent. If I didn't understand why you used Naruto as the QB's vessel, Minato, I could curse you. Oh, if only you knew by how much the village had betrayed you, Naruto. I'm So sorry I've failed in protecting you. I don't know, Naruto. I would like to say of course not, but only you really know the severity of your injuries, so there is a good chance that without the Kyuubi's chakra healing you, we might not be having this conversation today. Naruto was looking down at the floor, deep in thought. He hated the fox for the pain it had caused him. If it wasn't for the stupid fox, I would probably had a normal life. I might even have had a family, but now that I think about it, I should have been dead a long time ago. Flashback. Die demon, we'll get you for what you did to our families. We'll kill you this time, brat. The 9-year-old Naruto hadn't managed to keep in his scream as the first kunai embedded itself in his back. He was somewhere in the slums of Konoha, and the mob had managed to herd him into an alley and cut off all the exits. He cursed that he hadn't been fast enough to get away from the mob. Seeing that he had no way to get away, he resigned himself to his fate. He knew they wouldn't kill him. He knew the Hokage would have sent some Anbu to keep him safe. He had asked once why the Anbu didn't just stop the mobs when they formed, but the old man just sighed and grumbled about the civilian council meddling. Back to Naruto's current situation though, he was holding back tears. He had one kunai stuck in his right shoulder blade, and another man was advancing on him. He knew what was going to happen, and he knew if he tried to protect himself it would only be worse, so he braced himself for the impact as the man drove a knee into the short boy's chest. Naruto heard his ribs crack as he fell forward, only to be kicked onto his back by another member of the mob. Another one lashed out at him with a knife and slashed it across his chest. He could feel the blood running across his chest. Only a little longer, the Anbu will come and get me out of here. The thought still didn't help as the villagers kept on kicking him and plunging kunai into him. As he felt his consciousness fading, he was running over why the Anbu hadn't gotten him out yet. They usually don't take this long. Are they going to abandon me too? Naruto was overcome with agony and finding it difficult to breathe, as he noticed what looked like the air shimmering at the alley's entrance. Flashback end. That was probably the worst time I'd gotten hurt. I actually still have some scars from that time. I really do have the worst birthdays. Naruto sighed at the memory. Yeah, my life has been pretty horrible, at least after that. Gigi always had like a dozen Anbu around on my birthday. Naruto looked back up at his surrogate grandfather, and smiled sadly. Don't worry about it, Gigi, at least the fuzzball is good for something. At this, Sarutobi looked back up at the boy. He didn't understand how a child that had been through all that the boy had could still be such an optimistic child. He knew that if the boy's parents had been alive to see all that had happened to their son, the village would have been in trouble. He could only be thankful that Naruto was truly a kind-hearted child. He once again swore to do a better job helping the boy. Sarutobi slowly got up from his desk and walked around towards where Naruto was sitting on the couch. He slowly sat down beside the boy, and waited a moment before turning towards the boy and speaking. Naruto, this village has committed so many wrongs against you. I promise I'll do whatever I can to help you become the shinobi you want to become. However, seeing as you're up now, I do have the chakra weights that I promised to get you. At this, Naruto perked back up. He had been feeling rather down since thinking about the mobs that were always after him on his birthdays, but hearing about the chakra weights, he couldn't help but get excited. Awesome, thanks Gigi. So how do they work? The Hokage watched as Naruto had bounced off the couch, as if they hadn't just been speaking about what was quite possibly the most unpleasant topic two people could ever discuss. The old man sighed slightly at the blonde's antics. He knew it was part of the blonde's way of coping. He wanted to weep thinking back of everything that had caused Naruto to adopt his carefree and happy mask. Naruto, if you open the top drawer of my desk, on the right side, there is a wooden case. Bring it over here. Naruto, following the instruction, bolted to the drawer and finding the box in question, carried it over to his surrogate grandfather. The wooden box was solid, and had the same spiral that was on the back of his jumpsuit engraved into it. He always had liked the symbol, but he handed the box over to the Hokage. The Hokage, accepting the case from the blonde, took a minute to look at the symbol, and sigh slightly, knowing how few people there were now who knew why the symbol was so important. He opened the case to reveal what looked like a set of 4 metal bands. Naruto, this is a set of chakra weights. They may not look like much, but they are a very useful tool for training. Unlike normal weights that are large and bulky, these will not get in your way. Naruto looked at the 4 metal bands, and had some trouble believing how much they would help him get stronger, but he figured that the Hokage wouldn't make stuff up about training. How do they work then, GG? Well, to make them work, you channel chakra into the seals on the inside of the band. At this, the Hokage handed Naruto one of the bands. As Naruto looked it over, that the band also had one of the spirals engraved on it. He then looked on the inside, and saw some weird design that looked like it had a kanji or two at the center of the design. What's that, GG? The Hokage took another of the bands out of the case, and turned it around to show the blonde. Naruto, these markings on the inside are seals. They are somewhat like the seals that some shinobi use on scrolls to carry some of their possessions. There are actually two separate seals on these bands, and they work by channeling chakra into them. One of the seals is to open and close the bands, and the other is the weight seal. Until you have improved your chakra control, I only want you using the seal that opens and closes the bands, because the weight seals only absorb chakra, so once you pump chakra into them, it can't be reduced, so until you have your chakra control mastered, you can come to me to get me to increase the weight of each band. Naruto was somewhat disappointed that he wouldn't be able to do it all himself, but if the other day had taught him anything, it was how poor his chakra control was. It took hundreds of his clone an entire afternoon to get the leaf balancing exercise down. Okay, GG, hey wait. You said that some shinobi use seals for carrying stuff and things. Could I learn how to do that sort of thing? Naruto was really hoping that his surrogate grandfather would approve of him trying to learn something new. The Hokage had to work to keep his smile off his face at this request. The Uzumaki clan was naturally gifted at Fuinjutsu, and Minato had been a seal master himself, so he had high hopes for Naruto. A few days ago he would have doubted that Naruto would be able to learn Fuinjutsu because of how much theory there was to it. But if Naruto could spend a day in a library reading things that he had gone out of his way to ignore, he figured the young blonde would put some effort into studying something like Fuinjutsu. Naruto, what you're asking about is a very complicated thing to learn. It is an art known as Fuinjutsu, and it is very hard to learn. The Hokage couldn't help but feel slightly upset that he had decided to tease Naruto. However, I suppose if you can spend hours studying history that I could find you some introductory Fuinjutsu scrolls. Naruto bounded towards the Hokage, tackling him in a hug, excitedly repeating his thanks. The Hokage smiled at this, and slowly brought Naruto out of his ecstatic state, so that they could continue their discussion about the chakra weights. Naruto, I'll find you some scrolls on Fuinjutsu theory by the end of the week, so you should continue doing the training you started. Now let's get these weights on, okay? Naruto smiled at this, and looked at his surrogate grandfather. The Hokage smiled a bit, and asked Naruto to hold out his hands. Naruto complied instantly, and smiled as the Hokage unlocked the bands, and put the first two around either of his wrists, and then showed Naruto how to use the seals for opening and closing the band, and had the blonde demonstrate that he could do it a few times before he told him to put him on around his ankles. Naruto decided that he liked how they looked. Only the ones on his wrist had the spiral engraved in them, but they were all made of near black, slightly shiny steel, just like the kunai he used. Overall, he decided that they were pretty badass, and they were going to help him become more badass. Naruto listened as the Hokage explained that he should only ask himself, or other adult shinobi, for help with increasing the amount of weight in the seals, and Naruto willing agreed, looking forward to training. The Hokage channeled some chakra into each seal, and told Naruto that each of the chakra weights was around 15 pounds now, and that he shouldn't ask to have them increased till he didn't notice any resistance to moving around with the weights on. After chatting for a little while longer, Naruto decided he should make his way back to his apartment, and get some more rest. It took him quite a bit longer than usual to get back to his house, but finally Naruto made it up the 6th flight of stairs to his apartment. Opening the door and stepping in, he promptly tripped and fell over the piles of old clothes, empty instant ramen cups, and general mess that he had accumulated over the years. Naruto decided that the first thing he'd do is get some food, but seeing as he didn't really feel like moving at the moment, he quickly summoned around half a dozen clones. He ordered 2 to carry him to his room, 1 to cook something, 2 to clean up his apartment, which he had never bothered doing before, but decided if he was going to be a serious ninja he should take the other aspects of his life seriously, and that way he wouldn't be tripping on all the junk lying around. The last clone he decided to send to the library. He told the clone that when it got there it should summon the same amount of clones as the other day, and get to reading. A few hours later Naruto woke up again staring at his ceiling. He made to get up, being mindful of the weights. He decided that he'd rested enough, because the sooner he got to training, the sooner he'd get used to the new weight he was using. After making his way to the kitchen he was shocked by what he saw. There was a large amount of food prepared on the table, and the room looked nothing like it had just a few short hours ago. He sat down in his chair, and greeted the 3 clones who were cleaning up the apartment, and was very thankful he had decided to clean his house up. He ate the meal prepared by the clone, thanking Kami that the clone he had sent to get food yesterday had the sense to get a cookbook. He was Still bugged by not getting to eat ramen all the time, but he figured learning how to cook for himself wasn't a bad thing either. After finishing his meal and telling his clones to keep up with the cleaning, he set off to train. He arrived at the training ground he had used the last day, finding that it was thankfully vacant once again. He once again summoned a few hundred clones, telling them to continue working on the leaf. Balancing exercise, he wanted them to be able to balance them by their stems while spinning them with their chakra by the end of the week, so he was sure he mastered the exercise before moving on to the next one, and he once again summoned a clone to come up with a workout for the day. The next few days were brutal for the young blonde. He became slowly convinced he was suffering from ramen deprivation, as well as physical exhaustion from his workouts and mental exhaustion because of the information he would learn from the clones. He had come across some interesting books in his studies, but he still felt sorry for the clones he would send to the library. He was also a little upset with how slow his clones were reading. He knew that they had to read everything thoroughly or he wouldn't get all his ramen, but by this point he wasn't sure if 23 bowls of ramen would last him till the next weekend. Sadly, he was out of time for this week, and was making his way towards the Hokage Tower. Speaking of the Hokage, Naruto had realized just how bad of an idea it had been to call the Hokage old man when he had been reading some of the older laws. He found out that being so disrespectful towards the village leader was a punishable offense, and he was increasingly glad that he was as close with the Hokage as he was. He had visited Iruka sensei the following evening, and gotten quizzed on the books he had read, and was slightly shocked that his old sensei was surprised he had read 23 books over the course of the week. He knew he had been a bad student, but he was still a little offended that Iruka hadn't immediately believed that he had read all the books he said. Naruto was by now outside the door of his surrogate grandfather's office, and was looking forward to two things, the first of which was he'd be getting some scrolls on Jutsu, and the second was obviously the ramen. The Hokage, unlike Naruto, hadn't had a good week. It had been one issue after the other. He had started training again, and was sorely disappointed in how far his skill had fallen, and if all the work he was putting his body through to work himself back up wasn't enough, he had discovered that the Civilian Council had managed to steal all the funds from the Uzumaki vaults. 4 members of the Civilian Council were still unconscious in the hospital due to the pressure of the key he had directed at them and the finance minister would probably never recover. He had very nearly executed the entire Civilian Council for saying that the funds were appropriated because of the damage the QB had caused in its attack. He actually had ordered the banking minister to meet with Ibiki for further questioning, but he was never more ashamed of the village as a whole than he had been at that moment. The Uzumaki clan had helped fund the Senju clan when they were founding the village, because the Uzumaki clan and the Senju clan were distantly related. The Uzumaki clan had already settled in Uzu no Kuni before Konoha had been founded, and their lands were rich with precious metals and gems. The Hokage side, he had ordered the money returned, but he didn't know how long the Civilian Council would drag out returning it, but he had to make sure that the money was back at the very least by Naruto's 16th birthday, because at that point, whether he was a Chunin or not, he was granted his inheritance. He was drawn out of his dark mutterings by a knock at his door, and knowing that he had an appointment with Naruto today, invited the young blonde in. The two spoke for a while. Well, more accurately, Naruto talked, and the Hokage listened. He was ecstatic to hear of Naruto's successes. He was also shocked when the boy asked to have his weights increased, but he complied, increasing each of the weights to 20 pounds. The two soon left the office, heading to Naruto's favorite place to eat, Ichiraku Ramen. Their arrival caused an uproar with the ramen chef and his daughter, who had been worried all week when Naruto hadn't shown himself once. The last time they had seen him was the day of his academy exam, and they still hadn't known if he had passed or not. Chuchi and Naomi were both very happy when they saw their favorite blonde stroll into their stand. After chatting for a bit, and the expected heart attack scare on Chuki's part upon hearing that his favorite customer wasn't going to be eating his ramen every day, the group discussed what Naruto had been up to the past week. Chuchi and Naomi were shocked to hear how much the young blonde was working himself, and were completely shocked upon hearing what Mizuki had tried to do to Naruto. Chuchi smiled upon hearing that the Hokage would be buying Naruto ramen weekly though, and he truly believed that using ramen as motivation was a brilliant way to motivate the boy to work on his studies. It also didn't hurt that it meant he would be getting the Hokage himself as a recurring patron, and in Konoha, that meant good things for your business. When Naruto finally placed his order, Chuchi couldn't help but hold back a slightly shocked expression. He was accustomed to Naruto being able to down a dozen bowls or ramen if he had needed to go without it for a day or two, but hearing the young boy order 23 assorted bowls, he couldn't believed that the young blonde would be able to finish them. Overall, the visit took a little over an hour. To most, the sight of the young blonde practically inhaling bowl after bowl of ramen was slightly revolting. But a select few watched with an odd fascination, curious as to where all the ramen went. It took till the 20th bowl for Naruto to slow down. He remembered that this would be the only time he would eat ramen for the next 7 days, and decided he would savor the last 3 bowls. When the blonde finally finished off the last bowl, placing it on the precariously high pile, Chuchi smirked at his other customers' astonishment. The only one who could have possibly eaten more ramen was a near-starved Akimichi, and even then he figured they would be hard-pressed. The Hokage departed a short while after Naruto finished eating. He would have loved to spend more time with his surrogate grandson, but he himself had work to do, and even with his clones handling all his old paperwork, he still had meetings to attend, and training to do, so after warning Naruto not to overdo it with his training, he made his way out. Naruto left shortly after that, saying that he and Arpos, DC Chuchi and I army next week, nearly bursting into tears of the thought of having to go so long without ramen, and seeing the young boy in Arpos' distress, Chuchi offered Naruto a bowl to take with him, to which shockingly the blonde refused. He said even though he didn't an Arpos like it, he had promised the old man that he would only eat ramen once a week, and only when the Hokage bought it. Naruto made his way back to his apartment, deciding he and Arpos take today easy, so that he and Arpos be able to get used to the added weight he had on. On his trip back home, he was thinking back over some of the things he had learned in the past week. Flashback: Naruto had just mastered the leaf exercise, and could now balance the leaf on his forehead only using its stem, and he had finally gotten down the more refined chakra control to rotate it. He had been making his way to drop off his rent, and had decided he and Arpos give the rent to the man who owned the apartment in person. So he was shocked when he waited outside the door for 10 minutes after knocking before he finally realized that the hinges on the door looked like they were rusted shut. Naruto let his curiosity get the best of him, and decided to sneak in through one of the windows, and found that the place was covered in dust. There had been some old furniture there, left as if forgotten, but upon exploring the apartment, he was shocked to see that behind the door was a small pile of the envelopes he delivered every month as his rent. He noticed that there were 3 years' worth of rent in the pile, and he tried to remember the last time he had seen anybody in the complex. Sadly, he could an Arpos remember seeing anyone in the building since he was 9, so he cursed his poor observations, took the pile of money he had slowly accumulated in the empty apartment, and created a few clones to search the rest of the complex. He found all the apartments in a similar condition to the first one he searched, aside for the apartment on the 9th floor, being the top floor of the apartment. He assumed it had once been used by some rich people, because the apartment on the top floor was a suite that took up the entire 9th level. He was shocked that anybody needed that much room, but he figured rich people probably had that much space just to show off. Flashback end: Naruto arrived back at his apartment. He had debated taking residence in the huge apartment on the top floor, but he figured it was just more empty space. However, he didn't an Arpos feel bad about moving to one of the apartments in the building that had a slightly bigger kitchen and living room. He had found that apparently only the hot water in his apartment didn't an Arpos work, so he moved to one of the other apartments on his floor. He had also taken the liberty of an Arpos borrowing an Arpos some of the furniture from the apartment on the top floor. He figured if it was just going to sit there, someone should make use of it. He made his way to the couch in his living room and relaxed. He drifted back off into sleep, looking forward to training, and faded into dreams of him swimming through lakes filled with ramen. Naruto woke up a few hours later, and created a clone to quickly cook something. He decided to do push-ups while waiting for his meal to be prepared, and was at around 500 by the time the clone dispelled, letting him know that the food was done. He quickly ate, and decided that he would visit Iruka-sensei in the hospital. And quote, he and Arpos probably bored out of his mind. It's good he and Arpos able to leave in a couple days. I and Arpos ask him to get ramen with me and GG next week. And quote. Chapter 4: Infiltration and the Forgotten. It had been a month since the incident with the Forbidden Scroll, and Naruto was shocked at how much he had changed. He was faster, smarter, stronger, and even slightly more mature. He looked over the past month with a sense of pride. He had gotten so much stronger than he was before. And he had essentially done it on his own. He had asked for some pointers from his surrogate grandfather, or Iruka-sensei, if he needed help with some of his training, but he'd been doing the work himself. Naruto was currently lying on top of the Hokage monument, staring up at the night sky. He never knew why he was drawn to sitting on the Yondaim's head, but the man was his idol after all, even if he had sealed the stupid fox inside him. It had been a long day of training for our young blonde, and he was just taking some time to rest. He lifted his arms above his head in a stretch, and smiled at the resistance he felt. He had gone against the Hokage's advice and increased each of his weights by 10 pounds. Yesterday instead of the usual 5, and was proud he wasn't finding it too difficult to get used to the new weight. He had spent the last month reading through all the shinobi history of the village, and he was pleased to say that the Hokage had agreed that anything more he read about their village's history was redundant by this point, seeing as he would only be going over it from different perspectives, so he had instructed Naruto to learn about the history of the other shinobi villages. He had decided he'd read about the villages that were allied with Konoha first, and decided that he'd start reading up on the founding of Sunakagura tomorrow. He had read about a lot of smaller villages in passing, and was looking forward to reading about him too. He had also read in a few of the histories about a village called Uzushiogakure, the village hidden in the whirling tides. Apparently the village had been an ally of. He figured that the best way to go about his reading to keep himself from getting everything he learned confused would be to study the different villages one at a time. So he would only study the destroyed villages, after he had built up a good knowledge on the ones that were still around, and could pose a threat to his home today. Naruto was also looking forward to when he'd be able to go out on missions and see the other villages. He had decided he wanted to see the ruins of Uzushiogakure, and had made a mental note to ask his GG if when he was a bit older if he would be allowed to go and visit the place. The blonde pushed himself up off the Yondaime's head, and slowly stood up. He nearly fell forwards off the monument, but quickly stabilized himself by pushing chakra to his feet till he didn't fall. Phew, that wouldn't have been good. Thank Kami I listened to GG and worked on my chakra control. The young blonde had slowly been making his way through chakra control exercises and had finally gotten the tree walking exercise down the other day. He was still having trouble deciding what the next exercise he was going to do would be. There were two that stood out to him as immediately useful. He figured he'd be able to get them both down before he had his team assignment, but was trying to decide which would be more immediately useful, in case he couldn't get them both down. Water walking makes sense as the next thing to learn, but the chakra circulation exercise would be really useful for when it's cold, so I don't have to run around in a big jacket all the time. Well, if GG is gonna buy me some new shinobi gear, I know I'm going to have to tone down the orange. As much as orange is a kick-ass color, Naruto was laughing at himself while he was making his way back towards his apartment. He was looking around when he felt someone watching him, and quickly turned to look towards one of the rooftops, and saw an Anbu shift out of sight. Just you wait, Anbu-san. At this the young blonde had a slightly sinister grin etched across his face. He had initially intended his painting the Hokage monument to be his last big prank that would be forever remembered, but recently he had gotten an idea to work on something. He came up with his idea, and knew that it would be his crowning achievement in the pranking world. If he succeeded pulling it off, he might make enemies of some of the less good-natured Anbu, but he figured pulling off this prank would also show him just how far he had gotten in his stealth training. By this time, the blonde had made it back to his apartment building and walked up to his new apartment. He had told the Hokage about the building being abandoned, and the Hokage just said he didn't want Naruto living there in an empty building. After much begging and pleading, Naruto managed to convince his surrogate grandfather to allow him to stay, and after even more begging and pleading, the old man grudgingly gave him permission to use the building as he saw fit. Naruto reached his apartment door and walked in. The apartment he had moved into after discovering the building was empty was much nicer space, and Naruto had also managed to convince Iruka to buy him what he needed to start working on Fuinjutsu. After getting the Fuinjutsu scrolls from the after getting all the theory down, Naruto had been anxious to try him out, and decided to make a simple storage seal. It took him 8 ruined scrolls, but he finally managed to get the formula right for creating a storage seal. He was currently using it to carry around his book on chakra control, a bingo book that he got after spending more time in the library, as well as a few bentos that he or one of his clones would prepare in the mornings. He had also been working on a set of barrier seals, and figured he nearly had the formula down behind them. It was a 6-point barrier. He had decided on this because he had learned that anything under a 6-point barrier could destabilize if one of the seals was destroyed, but this way, if one of the seals failed, the barrier would continue to operate until there were only 3 left. He wanted to have an 8-point seal, but he knew that was far more advanced, and so he stuck with a 6-point seal. As Naruto made his way to his bedroom, which now, thanks to the generously donated furniture from the giant apartment on the top floor, had a rather large and exceptionally soft bed up against the window. He dropped into his bed and started drifting off, thinking of all the shinobi he had read about in the shinobi records. He had been slightly upset when he found out that the majority of the shinobi listed in the archive were all either retired or deceased shinobi. He understood now that it was because it was sensitive data, and as such the village couldn't have info on the current shinobi out to the public, but he had been happy to find that there was stuff about the well-known shinobi of the village. He had been reading up on his personal hero, the Yondava Hokage, and found out that his teacher was none other than one of the legendary Sannin. He only knew a lot about them because he had found an old bingo book in the library, and found it really interesting, so he went out to a shinobi supply store under the Henge no Jutsu, and got himself a copy. Naruto realized that if he was going to be going out on missions, he was at one point or another going to face shinobi from other villages. He decided that as awesome as he was, or was going to be, that he should know about the really dangerous shinobi across the elemental nations. The next 6 weeks passed like the month before. Naruto trained himself into the ground with fervor every single day, and would study Fuinjutsu in the evenings till it hurt his head. The only thing not directly related to his training that he had done in the 6 weeks, were at the 1 month mark from team assignment, he had finally pulled what he dubbed his masterpiece as the village prankster. Flashback: Naruto was sneaking through the village, and making his way towards Anbu headquarters. It was supposed to be a secret location, but after following a small group of Anbu around for a few days, he figured out its location. As Naruto slipped out of the side alley he was standing in wearing just trademark bright orange jumpsuit, he dashed across the street keeping low, and to the shadows to avoid detection. He decided that this and R pose, mission and R pose, would be his jumpsuit and R pose's last mission, no matter how much he loved the color. A bright orange jumpsuit was probably the least non-discreet outfit he could even wear. This was exactly why he was wearing it on this mission. If he could sneak into Anbu headquarters undetected, in a kill me orange jumpsuit no less, and pull off his prank, well then, that had to say something about his infiltration and stealth skill. And quote. Okay, now if I remember, I and Arpos, VE got to head all the way down this alley, then there is a side passage that an Arpos, LL take me close to the Anbu headquarters. And quote. Naruto kept to the shadows against the walls in the alley. He had debated using the rooftops. Buta knew that would get someone an Arpo's attention. He was about to turn a corner when he heard someone coming around the corner. He quickly jumped up and stuck himself to the bottom of a balcony and stayed there as he watched the people walk underneath him. The two were wearing standard Konoha vests, and were talking about some mission. Naruto decided not to pay much attention to the details they were talking about, but he made a note of what the shinobi looked like. From his vantage point he could tell that one of the men had silver hair, and from what he could tell seemed to be wearing a mask covering the lower half of his face. And he stayed in his hiding place until the two men passed him. He waited a few minutes, to ensure that they were gone before he dropped back down to the ground. Moving quickly, he rounded the corner, and saw his target. The Anbu headquarters weren't anything like one would expect. The building seemed to have been designed to be the most plain and unimportant looking building imaginable. It appeared to be a small 4-story apartment complex, but Naruto knew that the Anbu headquarters also had a substantial underground section, so he moved towards the building. Naruto had already visited the building once, so he knew how he was going to get inside. He quickly made his way around to the back of the building, and started making his way up the drain pipe. He could have just walked up to his entryway, but he didn't want to risk alerting anyone by using chakra. Once he made his way to the 3rd floor window, and slid inside. Making a quick check around, he found that the halls were empty. He knew his target was in the 1st floor underground. He silently made his way towards the staircase, and performed his Henge no Jutsu, to appear as the silver-haired man he saw earlier, and made his way down the staircase. He was surprised that he hadn't met any security, but decided not to question his luck. Upon making his way to the 1st subterranean level, he dispelled his henge, and realized why he hadn't run into anyone. He heard some loud cheering and singing. Letting his curiosity get the better of him, he snuck towards the door that the noise was coming from, and saw inside what looked like a lounge, dozens of shinobi drinking sake and handing gifts to another one of the shinobi. Naruto couldn't believe his luck that the Anbu would let their guard down for someone's birthday. He certainly wasn't going to let this get in the way of his prank. He quickly made his way down the hallway to the equipment room. He pulled out a storage scroll that he had in his pocket, and made quick work, not wanting to waste any more time that was necessary. Hee, I can't wait to see them tomorrow morning. I so gotta hear it when they try to explain this to GG. With that last thought, the young blonde retraced his steps, and made his way out of the building. I can't believe that I got away with that. I mean, wow, those are our elite shinobi, they won't know what hit them. Unable to hold back his laughter, the blonde let out a small chuckle as he launched himself out of the 3rd floor window. He did in an R pose. Even mind if someone noticed the chakra he used, he had to get back to his apartment before he woke up the village with his laughter. Little did Naruto know that one person saw his escape, the same silver-haired shinobi from earlier that evening. The man did in an R pose. Know what the blonde had done, but he had a feeling he should stop by the Hokage and R pose's office in the morning. The Sandaime Hokage woke up the following morning feeling anxious. He wasn't an R pose. Sure what caused it, but he knew that today was going to be a long day. And quote, Naruto, I hope you don an R pose. Have anything to do with what an R pose? Wrong, and quote. Oh, how wrong he was. The next day, feeling like he should find out the issue as soon as possible, he left for his office early. When he arrived, he was shocked to find several Anbu stationed outside his office doorway, waiting for him to arrive. It wasn't an R pose. Odd for the Anbu to be in his office. After all, he almost always had several hidden inside his office in case of intruders, but since he had taken to training more and having his clones do the paperwork, he had removed those Anbu. He didn't an R pose. Want his new method of dealing with paperwork to be leaked after all. Sarutobi also noticed something else odd about the Anbu. They were all wearing large hooded cloaks over their uniforms that went all the way to the floor, completely obscuring their uniforms. Putting off that for the moment, he quickly walked into his office, and sat behind his desk. Sighing and rubbing the bridge of his nose, he turned to the Anbu who was currently in charge, and quote, Neko, report, why are you all concealing your uniforms? And quote. There was a noticeably awkward pause while the four Anbu looked at each other. Finally the one identified as Neko spoke, and quote, Hokage-sama, we have what? How could this happen? What was the damage? The Hokage was absolutely shocked. Who could have broken into his elite shinobi's headquarters? That was a huge problem. If someone could get in once, then they could do it again, and there was no telling how much damage they might have done to the village. Well, that's the thing, Hokage-sama. You see, nothing was damaged, per se, and nothing seems to be missing either. At this, Neko lowered her masked head. To say the Hokage was relieved was an understatement, but that led to other concerns, such as why the Anbu all looked so embarrassed. If nothing was missing or damaged, then why were they all here, and what was with their cloaks? I see, Neko, well that is good at least. I must ask then, why did you all feel the need to come by? And if nothing is out of place, how do you know that your headquarters were even infiltrated? Well, Hokage-sama, we sensed a chakra signature heading away from headquarters, and then there was the other thing. I see. Could you identify the chakra signature? Possibly, Hokage-sama, but it could take a while. It was only detected for a brief moment. I see, and how brief of a moment is that? 1 second, Hokage-sama. The Hokage was curious now. Who could possibly have gotten into the Anbu headquarters, and managed to go completely undetected? It was an issue, but he was still rather curious as to the cloaks, so he decided to change his line of questioning. Well then, Neko, you and your men will just have to continue looking into this issue. Now would you kindly explain why you are all concealing your uniforms? At this, all the Anbu tensed, and then what they did surprised the Hokage. After all, it wasn't every day that the village's elite ninja would shuffle around, fiddling with their hands, and look everywhere but at the Hokage. Well you see, Hokage-sama, there was one thing that was damaged at headquarters. The Hokage could tell that they were stalling and trying to get around his question, so he decided to just circumvent their evasions. Anbu, I order you to remove your cloaks. The Anbu looked towards each other. If it weren't for the fact that their faces were covered, the Sandaime would swear that they all looked horrified at the idea, but after receiving another stern glare from the Hokage watched with interest as the Anbu started undoing the fastenings along the cloak. He was slightly surprised when he saw that they were closed all the way from the neck to where they brushed the ground. He grew more and more curious until the Anbu realized that they had no other method for stalling, and they all dropped their cloaks. The Hokage looked at his Anbu dumbly for a moment and didn't say anything, and then burst out laughing at the sight before him. Before him stood 4 of his elite shinobi, all wearing matching Anbu uniforms, in a brilliantly bright, kill me orange. Needless to say, he automatically understood why the Anbu was so embarrassed. After all, there was only one shinobi in all of Konoha that enjoyed that particular color, and he just so happened to be the only person in Konoha who would have the gall to sneak into Anbu headquarters just to dye all their uniforms that color. After taking a moment to calm down, the Hokage turned back to his now obviously humiliated Anbu. Well, I assume that it wasn't just the 4 of you who had their uniforms, damaged. No, Hokage-sama, there was not a single uniform left in headquarters that wasn't damaged. At this point, all 5 people standing in the office heard what sounded like a snort of laughter, and saw a book tumble off the shelf and land on the floor. If this wasn't enough of a confusing occurrence, the fact that the book exploded in a puff of smoke to reveal a certain young blonde who was Notoriously famous for his pranks, laughing so hard that he was wheezing and pointing at the Anbu, realizing his cover was blown, and taking advantage of the momentary shock on everyone in the room's face, the blonde made a hand sign, and seemingly puffed out of existence. After a moment of shock and profuse embarrassment on the ANBU's part, the Hokage turned and spoke again. "Well, Neko, it would seem that our culprit has revealed himself. If you wouldn't mind, would you please have him retrieved and brought to my office?" This seemed to get the Anbu and Arpo's attention. Each of them was mentally smacking themselves on the back of their heads for not figuring out who it was that had done this, but then they quickly came to realize a horrifying fact. "And quote, Hokage-sama, would it be possible for us to head out in standard issue Chunin and Jonin attire, as opposed to this?" and quote. Neko asked this hopefully. If it was required, they would even all pay for the temporary uniforms, but anything was better than what they were wearing. Sadly, and to their horror, they would not get off that easily. And quote, "I think not, Neko. Perhaps you can think of this as an exercise in stealth. After all, if a genin fresh out of the academy managed to infiltrate your headquarters in such an outfit, surely you can all operate for a day or two in orange as well." And quote. The Hokage was internally laughing his head off at the way the Anbu all slumped their shoulders at that, and quote. And also, pass that along to all other Anbu, that they are not permitted to attempt to camouflage their outfits. And quote. The Anbu looked terribly defeated as they walked out of the Hokage and Arpo's office, and began passing out the Hokage and Arpo's orders. Needless to say, the Anbu heeded the Hokage and Arpo's word in regard to treating their outfits as part of a stealth exercise, because only 2 Anbu were spotted by anyone that day. Flashback end Naruto would always remember that as his greatest prank ever. It would live in the memories of the Anbu for generations to come, and he could and Arpo's felt but be proud of how he had managed to pull it off. Another thing he had been proud of was how he had managed to evade the Anbu. They had been trying to catch him for several days. He had actually managed to break his own personal record on Anbu evasion. His old record had been something like 6 hours. This time it took the Anbu nearly 4 days to find him. However, even looking back at the memory of his most well-executed prank could not suppress the sadness and hurt he felt that was caused by his recent discovery. 2 days ago, Naruto had been in the library reading up on the history of other shinobi villages, and he decided he would read up a bit on Uzushiogakure. He was initially shocked on how little information he could find on it. It was almost as if someone, or several people had made it their mission to rid the library of all the information on Uzushiogakure that they could. Being who he was, this only further pushed the blonde to find the information, and after hours of searching, and through liberal use of the Henge no Jutsu to gain access to the restricted sections of the shinobi library, he found 2 books, one on the alliance of Konoha and Uzu, and the other being a very old book about the history of Uzushiogakure. Nothing he had expected could have prepared him for what he found in those books. It took him till the second line of the first of the 2 books to find a name that he didn't expect to find. He found the history of the Uzumaki clan. If it hadn't been for how much he'd been training and learning over the past few months, he would have ran to confront the Hokage about what he was learning right then and there, but as he couldn't do anything but read and weep at the tragic stories. Uzushiogakure was a relatively small shinobi village, located to the west of the Land of Fire, in the island nation of Uzu no Kuni. Uzushiogakure was founded by the Uzumaki clan a decade before Konohagakure, and was remarkably wealthy. From what he read, he learned that they had earned their wealth through the mineral-rich islands of Uzu, which had an abundance of precious metals, as well as rather large gemstone deposits. The Uzumaki were renowned for their unmatched skill in Fuinjutsu, as well as their remarkable vitality as well as their longevity. It wasn't unheard of for an Uzumaki to live well into their 100s. He was confused as to how he should feel about what had happened to his clan. They had been destroyed, almost entirely during the Second Shinobi War, when the armies of Kirigakure, Iwagakure and Kumogakure, as well as some of the smaller villages, all joined forces to attack Uzu. He read about the last stand of his people, and how even though they were hopelessly outnumbered, his clan stood their ground so they could ensure that the civilians were able to escape from the slaughter. Uzushiogakure had a shinobi force numbering around 2,000 in total, and the combined armies numbered were over 40,000, and still his family and his people stood their ground. They held the island hoping for help from either Konoha or Suna, but after 3 weeks of siege, and their numbers shinobi force taking casualties, the last of the Uzu shinobi gathered together, and managed to use a forbidden seal of their design at the cost of their own lives to seal the souls of all the attacking forces on Uzu. He had spent the last 2 days training himself harder than ever with the knowledge that he could be the last of his clan, and as such he had to make sure that his ancestors would be proud of him. Naruto had always wondered about his past, and about who his parents were, but he had never bothered looking through the shinobi records for information on them. He was an orphan, and for all he knew Uzumaki might have just been a name randomly given to him, but after reading all he had on clan laws, he knew it was a punishable offense to take a clan name if you were either born into the clan or adopted into it. And seeing that he wasn't adopted, it meant at least one of his parents was an Uzumaki. Naruto had made a point of ignoring the shinobi records for the past 2 days in fear of what he might find. He had always wanted to know who his parents were, but now that he knew that he might be able to find who they were, he was worried about what they would think of him. He was worried he might not be able to live up to their legacies. The next morning, Naruto awoke from dreams of his clan's last stand. He looked up at his jacket hanging in his closet, and stared at the spiral he had always worn on his sleeve. He couldn't quite remember when he got it, but he knew it had been on one of his birthdays. He couldn't help but be upset with the village for wearing his clan symbol, and so easily forget all his clan had stood for. The spiral that was on the back of all Konoha flak jackets was the symbol of the Uzumaki clan. When Konoha had been founded, the head of the Uzumaki clan had allowed the village to wear their symbol as a sign of trust and friendship between their villagers. Sighing at the forgotten memory of his clan, Naruto slowly went about his morning routine. I can't keep putting it off anymore. I need to know who they were. As Naruto left his house, he began making his way towards the library. He would have stopped by the Hokage's office earlier, but he couldn't help but feel betrayed that his surrogate grandfather never told him about his clan. He decided that if he couldn't find his parents in the shinobi record, he'd talk to the Hokage, but he decided that he couldn't have just some clone looking for his family. He decided that he needed to find out for himself. He made his way into the library, greeting the receptionist, and barely receiving any hostility from her. He had been coming here for the past 2.5 months after all, so he wasn't an entirely unwelcome sight. He learned that the head librarian didn't care who he was as long as he treated the books he read with respect, and he kept quiet. Making his way up a few staircases, he headed to where the records were kept. He was still apprehensive about what he might find, but he decided he couldn't let his worry get in his way. He quickly scanned through the records, finding the clan section. He hadn't bothered looking through clans, because he didn't know he had belonged to one. Scrolling through, he saw a lot of names he recognized as the names of his classmates, as well as some he wasn't too familiar with. He saw the Aburame, the Akamichi, the Hitaki, the Hyuga, the Inazaka, the Kurama, the Nara, the Sarutobi, the Senju, the Shimura, the Uchiha and the Yamanaka clan. He was instantly disheartened that his clan wasn't even listed here, but he decided that because they weren't officially a clan of Konoha, maybe they would just be in the main record. Sighing, he moved to a long row of drawers and searched through it. He was once again upset that the record had the shinobi listed based on the day of their death, so he spent a few minutes trying to figure out when his parents could have passed away. He in a matter of moments came to the conclusion that because he was born on the night of the Kyuubi attack, then at least his mother had to be alive all the time before then. He sighed as the move to the 2 drawers set apart labeled for the Kyuubi attack. Naruto spent hours going through the drawers. He couldn't help but feel responsible for every name he read. He felt sad to think that all that was left of all these shinobi who had died defending their village was a 4 inches by 6 inches card that had their information listed on it. He had been going through the records almost the entire day now, and it was getting near sunset when he realized he was coming near the end. Over the past hour or so, he had begun thinking that maybe what the villagers told him about his mother abandoning him had been right. If she wasn't in the records, then she must have abandoned him. As he was flipping through the final 20 cards, he noticed something that looked odd. He flipped back to the card in question, and stared at the name. Again, he was having a hard time making out what it said, because it looked like someone had spilled something over the card. Getting upset at that, Naruto pulled out a spare scroll that he had with him, and set the card on top of it. He wasn't sure if using his chakra to transfer the writing would work properly with something like this, but that was how you transferred seals from scrolls to other tools. Setting the card gently on the scroll, he placed his hands over top of it, and slowly began channeling his chakra through it. He knew the theory behind moving seals, even though he hadn't an R-pose. He actually practiced it much yet, but because it wasn't an R-pose, a seal, he channeled his chakra slowly, in hopes of just picking up the writing that was there before the stain. After several minutes of channeling his chakra, Naruto slowly removed the card and read what it said. Name, Uzumaki, Kushina. K.A. The Bloody Habanero, the Red Death Rank, Jonin Specialty, Fuinjutsu, Kenjutsu Note, at time of death, was off duty, due to pregnancy. In the Hokage Tower several hours later, across the village the Hokage was sitting his office. He had been worried about Naruto not having come by his office today, and so he had asked Kakashi to summon the boy. He knew it wasn't an R-pose. The best use of his arguably most skilled Jonin, but he figured it would give Naruto a chance to meet his soon-to-be sensei a little early. It was worrying him now because he had sent Kakashi off over 3 hours ago. Sadly, this was when Kakashi came flying through his office window panting. Unquote. Kakashi, what is it? Where is Naruto? Unquote. The silver-haired masked shinobi looked up at the Hokage and could only answer with one word. Unquote. Gone. Unquote. Chapter 5. The demon inside the Sandaime Hokage looked across his office at the panting figure of Hitaki Kakashi, and could barely form a coherent sentence. He had been waiting for several hours for Kakashi to return with Naruto, and had come up with several explanations as to why they were taking a while, but he had never imagined it was because of something like this. His only hope was that he had misheard the masked shinobi standing in front of him. Unquote. Kakashi, what do you mean Naruto is gone? Unquote. Kakashi took a moment to take a few deep breaths before looking at the Hokage. Unquote. Hokage-sama, as instructed I went off to locate Naruto, and return him here. I visited the training ground he has been using for the past 10 weeks, and he was not there. I then visited the ramen stand Hefrequence, and he was not there. I continued to go to the library, and found he had visited it earlier in the day, but he left a few hours before I arrived, and according to the head librarian he looked rather upset when he left. I wouldn't have thought that either Hokage-sama, but I visited his apartment building, and scoured the building from top to bottom, and when I found where he had been staying I found this. At this Kakashi reached into his pouch, and pulled out a small storage scroll, after applying a bit of chakra to it. Naruto's signature jacket appeared in a puff of smoke. The Hokage reached over, and took the jacket from the younger man's outstretched hands. He didn't understand why Naruto would have left his jacket in his home, but he then realized something was missing. Kakashi, where was the emblem that he had on the left shoulder? Kakashi looked surprised at this, and examined the jacket again. He noted that it looked as if the fabric had been cut around what had been on his shoulder. I don't know Hokage-sama, but after finding this in his apartment, as well as the fact that his apartment looked like someone had packed up in a hurry, I immediately started scouring the village. I checked every place he's been known to spend time, and couldn't find him. I spoke to his old sensei from the academy, and now the man is off scouring the village himself. Kakashi took a moment to catch his breath before continuing. I also stumbled upon the young Hyuga heiress near the village's main gate. She was crying her eyes out, and when I tried to figure out what she was saying, she just kept muttering that he was gone. From what I managed to get out of her, she had seen him arrive at his apartment looking rather upset, before making his way to the village walls. She said she tried to follow him, and he disappeared into a crowd, then she couldn't find him again. I only noticed her, because the shinobi on gate duty was a member of the Hyuga branch family, and he had been trying to calm her down. The Hokage sighed at this. He had never expected that Naruto would leave the village. The boy had been reading up on the village laws. He had to know what could happen to him as a shinobi leaving his village without authorization. The Hokage realized that he had only one choice. And quote, find him Kakashi. You have to find him, the village has wronged him so much, and though I don an R-pose, to understand what made him finally run, Kami knows that I must have his reasons, but you need to find him, and you need to bring him back here. Unquote. Sarutobi did an R-pose. T mentioned that he had determined that Naruto must have found out about the Uzumaki clan, which would have explained why he had taken the emblem he had worn on his jacket, but he could end an R-pose. T determined why that would lead the boy to have run away. The shinobi in front of him nodded, and started going through hand signs. Unquote. Kuchiyoza no Jutsu. Unquote. At this a group of 8 dogs appeared out of a cloud of smoke. The smallest one walked up to Kakashi, unquote. Hey Kakashi, why did you need to summon us all now? I was just about to step in the unquote. Kakashi, not wanting to have to hear a lengthy explanation of his summons and R-pose, grooming habits, quickly interrupted him. Unquote. Not now Pakken, you can talk about that stuff later, right now I need you all to get the scent from this jacket, and led me to it. Unquote. The small dog looked up at him, unquote. Why do you need all of this then Kakashi? I an R-pose. Enough for this R and an R-pose. Ti, unquote. Unquote. Normally yes, but the boy who an R-pose, jacket. This is can make Cage Bunchin, so he could easily confuse his trail. Now go, I and Arpos. LL catch up with you in a few minutes. And quat. With that, 7 of the 8 dogs jumped off. The last one stayed quiet waiting to lead Kakashi to the other dog and Arpos' trails. After that Wastone Kakashi turned back to the aging Hokage, and quat. Hokage-sama, do you have any idea why Naruto would have left the village? And quat. At the moment no, but go, you need to find him before word of this gets out to the council. Kakashi. Go. And quat. So with this Kakashi leapt out the window with the last of his summons leading his Naruto had stopped running around half an hour ago. He had run around 40 kilometers from the village when he started slowing down. Thanks to his endurance he would have been able to run further, but he decided to take it slow. I know they're going to send people to find me anyway, and I won't be able to avoid them forever. Naruto had never felt so betrayed. The man who he had looked up to and idolized had been lying to him his entire life. Gigi always said he didn't know who my parents were, but he had to know who my mother was. She was a Jonin for Kami's sake. The Hokage himself has to promote them. The blonde was dragging his feet. He had initially planned to get as far from the village as possible, but he realized he had nowhere to go. He had considered going to the ruins of UZU, but he didn't have any way to get across the water to the islands. He had started working on the water walking exercise a few weeks ago, but he hadn't mastered it yet. He had initially not wanted anyone to find him, so when he had left the village he created over 24 clones, and sent them off in different directions, but after he crossed through a stream, he knew that at least the trail left by his scent would be gone. So at that point he had dispelled them. He knew a few of his clones had also crossed streams and rivers, so it wouldn't be easy for anyone to trace him, but he still wasn't sure what he was going to do. So the blonde walked. He tried to come up with some reason why the man who he had viewed as his surrogate grandfather would have lied to him about his parents. Would it have been that bad for him to even know one of the names? Why would the village have basically gotten rid of the history of his clan? None of it made sense, and with how he was feeling at the moment, he really didn't feel like giving anyone a chance to explain. His mother had to have had friends, and unless everyone who had ever known her had hated her, it didn't make sense that the entire village would view him as a demon. He was also upset that he really didn't know anything about her, aside from her name. He was really glad he had started learning Jutsu, seeing as it was his clan's speciality, but he was really upset that he didn't have anyone from his family to teach him. He didn't even have any family scrolls. He decided that at one point he was going to need to visit the daimyo of the Land of Fire, because he figured if anyone would have a family tree of what was apparently the royal clan of an allied country, it would be another royal family. The problem was that he knew there was no way for him to actually be able to meet with him. After all, he was just a genin, and more than that, he was a genin who had ran from his village. For all he knew, the daimyo might think that he was a demon himself. So he kept on walking. He had left his jacket behind because it would only make him easier to spot in the forest. He was currently just wearing his jumpsuit pants, a black t-shirt, and his shinobi sandals, along with his weights. He had also stuck a few sealing scrolls in his pockets, and was carrying some spare sets of clothes, and some food in them. He kept on walking till and noticed how dark it was getting. He figured that even if he wanted to go farther today, he shouldn't travel at night, because he didn't want to run into any bandits. He figured he'd be able to handle them, but he still didn't want to risk it. So he kept walking till he found a huge tree that seemed to have been hollowed out. From the looks of it, it might have once been an old outpost from back during the time of the clan wars, but he figured it would easily be better than sleeping out in the open. I can't believe how the village could turn their back on my clan like that. Hell, the Uzumaki helped fund the construction of the village, and they even supplied the village with chakra-rich metals in the beginning. Now the villagers just use the resources from my family's home, and treat it like it belongs to them. Muttering to himself, he searched through the hollowed-out tree. He unsealed his sleeping bag from one of his scrolls and lay down. He was about to go to sleep when he noticed that he hadn't an Arpos. He increased his weights that week. He remembered that the Hokage had warned him against upping his weights himself, because they responded to how much chakra he put into them. But he decided that he wasn't an Arpos. Planning on talking to the old man for a while, so he figured he and Arpos just do it himself. He didn't an Arpos want to overdo it though, so he tried pumping as little chakra as he could into them. He was fortunate in the sense that all his limbs were already against the ground, which resulted in his not knowing exactly how much weight he had added. He slowly drifted off into a deep sleep, feeling angry and betrayed by the one person who he had thought he could always trust. Somewhere else in the forest surrounding Konoha, Hitaki Kakashi was getting worried. He had been running for several hours now, and had yet to find Naruto. As he had feared, Naruto had left dozens of trails leading away from the village. He had followed one with one of his dogs for almost 30 kilometers, when it suddenly disappeared. He was disgruntled at this, but he knew he wasn't an R-pose. T known for his luck though, so he hadn't an R-pose. T really expected anything different. He sadly didn't an R-pose. T have any choice but head towards the next trail. Thankfully for him though, he did have his summons, who were also scouring the trails. The problem was that each of these trails died off because Naruto or his clones passed through a source of water, thus ending their trail. Which made it far more difficult to track, because it meant they would have to rely on visual signs, and seeing as the one they were searching for was a ninja, using clones that may or may not have disappeared made this a terribly unfavorable gamble. And quote, Minato-sensei, Kushina-san, I an R-pose. I'm sorry, I should have been there for your son more. I should have helped him, and now it might be too late, and quote. Kakashi quickly reached into his pouch and grabbed a soldier pill. He could end an R-pose. T risk running short of chakra, and he would be using more than wasafe with what he was going to do next. And quote, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and quote. 4 clones appeared next to Kakashi, and they each set off down one of in the direction of the blonde and R-pose. Trails. He just hoped he found the boy soon. The next morning with Naruto woke up slowly. He had had a dream where he was walking down what had appeared to be a sewer. He was feeling a bit chilly, and subconsciously reached for his jacket, and quote. Damn, I forgot. I left my jacket back in the village. Darn, whatever, it was the Hokage got it for me anyways. I don an R-pose. T need it, and quote. Naruto could end an R-pose. T helped but get angry at the thought of the man who he had viewed as his surrogate grandfather. He figured that there would be people out after him by this point, and quote. After all, Konoha can an R-pose. T lose its only demon, and quote. Naruto had read about Jinchuriki in one of the books he had picked up out of interest in the restricted section of the library. He had learned that Huison an R-pose. T the only one to ever have had some demon or other sealed inside of him. He was rather upset when he read that most of the time Jinchuriki were just treated as weapons, but then again, he figured at least if he had been treated like that he could have had someone to teach him properly. Naruto sat up, and quickly discovered that he could end an R-pose. T lift his arms, and quote. Ugh, even after using chakra, I can still feel how heavy they are. I'm not going to be moving fast. He figured it wouldn't matter much, because he would probably end up being caught within a day, but he was a bit upset that he wasn't going to be able to make it more difficult for whoever the Hokage had sent after him. He spent the next hour or so stretching and getting his mobility back. It was difficult, but he was able to move normally by this point. Sadly, he suddenly heard what sounded like a group of people talking. He moved towards the opening in the tree and peered outside. As soon as his eyes became accustomed to the light, he became worried by what he saw. Outside of the tree, and heading directly towards where he was hiding, were a group of 6 men. The men weren't shinobi though, and they definitely weren't from Konoha. He was debating being pleased that the shinobi hadn't found him yet. Sadly, that was when one of the men in the group spotted him. "You, what do you think you're doing in our hideout?" As soon as the man spoke, his companions became aware of Naruto and started drawing their weapons. "What the hell? Why do I have the worst luck? Are you kidding me, Kami? What did I ever do to you?" Sadly for the blonde, the bandits took his silence as reason to start advancing on him. They weren't moving quickly, but they have begun to spread out, so that he couldn't get away. "Sorry kid, but we can't have you telling anyone else where we have been hiding out. It's the end of the line for you." The men were developing sadistic smiles as they saw the blonde freeze up. They weren't the sort. Back with Naruto though, he was shocked. He was frozen. He saw them coming towards him, and talking about killing him. It was like he wasn't anything more than a piece of junk. He tried to move, but he couldn't. They just kept getting closer and closer. In his mind, Naruto was running. Through all the times he had been attacked, he had nearly been killed a few times, but someone had always shown up at the end and saved him. He knew that the Hokage wouldn't have let him die, even if he had done a terrible job keeping him safe, but there was no one who would help him. This time, he was far from the only home he had ever known, and he felt just as helpless as he had when the mobs used to corner him. Every fiber of his being was screaming at his body to move, but he just watched as they got closer. By now they were less than 10 meters from him, and they all had their weapons drawn. "Or, is the little baby sacred?" one of the men joked while the others cackled back at him. Naruto watched as they laughed at him, and he saw one pull out a kunai. The man obviously wasn't skilled with the weapon, especially seeing as he managed to nick his finger with it as he flipped it around to get ready to throw. Naruto was still stuck. Why can't I move? I don't want to die. Here, I just found out about my clan. I have to revive my clan. I can't disappoint them. I won't let the world forget my clan. All of a sudden Naruto felt like he was in control of himself. He saw the man throw the kunai at him, but he wasn't worried. He quickly rolled to the side and at the same moment shot out one of his arms, and caught the kunai out of the air. He saw the shock on the men's faces at his reaction. Naruto slowly stood back up, and looked at the men. It was like time was frozen, and no one moved. Finally the man who seemed to be in charge of the gang shook himself. What are you all waiting for? Get the brat. At this the group of men all charged at Naruto. He saw the first one swipe at him, and he dodged around to the side. He saw another blade coming down at him, and he used the kunai to block it. Naruto then quickly flipped over one of the bandits, and slashed at his neck with the kunai. He wasn't paying attention to exactly what he was doing. He was just letting his instinct take control. He dodged under another slash, and lunged forward planting his borrowed kunai into the man's stomach. Seeing another man rush at him, he dived over the falling man's back, and rolled under another of the bandit's legs. He quickly slashed out, severing the tendons in the man's legs. Before spinning around and planting the kunai in the side of the man's neck, he had hit the man with so much force that the kunai slipped out of his grip. Seeing the three men who were still standing look at him with rage in their eyes, he jumped backwards, towards the other two fallen men, and grabbed their swords. Once again the man who was in charge seemed to be shouting something, but Naruto wasn't able to hear it. The blood was pounding in his ears, drowning out all sound. The men charged again. Not being particularly skilled in kenjutsu, Naruto did his best to block all the slashes made at him. Sadly he couldn't block them all, and he started gaining cuts and tears in his clothing. Gritting his teeth to block out the pain, Naruto jumped away from the men, and hurled the two swords at the men. Two of them easily dodged the makeshift attack, but one was not as lucky as the sword managed to embed itself deep into his chest. With a burst of speed Naruto rushed at the last two men. He was doing his best to dodge their swings and slashes, and after working his way inside their defenses, he started lashing out at the men with his fists. He managed to make good contact with one of the men's elbow, and seemed to shatter it. Moving quickly, he grabbed the kama from the man's hands, and slashed at his neck. Jumping away again, Naruto stood across from the man who had first told the men to kill him. He saw the man look shocked and enraged. He looked like he was yelling something, but he then charged at Naruto. Naruto waited as the man got closer. Before he finally lunged, he launched himself towards the man, and slammed right into his chest. The bandit, not being able to stand up against the chakra-reinforced action, was forced off his feet into one of the nearby trees. Naruto dropped the kama when he flew towards the man. Seeing man approach him again, Naruto jumped into his guard again, and dealt a devastating fist to the man and Arpo's throat. Jumping back, Naruto stared at the man, as he saw he start to cough up blood as he fell forward onto his knees. It was at this moment that Naruto came down from his adrenaline-fueled high, and looked around him. He was standing in the center of a ring of his would-be attackers. He watched as the last man kneeling before him, coughing up blood. He watched the man slowly fall forward face first into the ground. Naruto finally looked down at himself. He saw that his feet were covered in blood, his pants had cuts and tears all over them, and were no longer orange because of all the blood that had gotten on them. His shirt was still black, but it was sticking to his chest in places where blood had seeped through it. Naruto was in a state of disbelief looking at himself. He wasn't an Arpos. Sure what to think until he looked at his hands, and the last thing he saw are red, before he felt himself sinking to his knees and sobbing as he lost sight of the world around him. Not too far away, Kakashi had been running all night, and all morning. He had been getting more and more worried as his clones had begun to dispel. He was getting worried that he wasn't an Arpos. Going to be able to find the boy. He only had one clone left out searching, and he wasn't an Arpos. Finding any signs of where the boy could have gone to. Most of his summons had returned to their realm some time ago, due to tiredness, and so now he only had Pakken, who was still with him. Suddenly he got hit with the memories from his last clone. He nearly missed catching himself on the next branch when he received the memories. The clone had been following a decent path for a time after the water. When the path seemed to disappear, it had stumbled across multiple paths, and made to follow one of them. After following one of the paths to what appeared to be a cave that was being used as a storage space for what His clone suspected was bandits. It had begun making its way back to where the paths diverged. It had been a few minutes away from its destination when it heard a blood-curdling scream, and messed up its landing and ended up smashing into a tree, dispelling itself. As soon as he sorted through the memories, he shot off in the direction his clone had been heading. He knew he would take at least an hour to get there, but if by chance Naruto was around there, he had to find the boy. Come on, Pakken, we've got to hurry. Back with Naruto. I killed them all. Naruto wasn't sure what to do. The last thing he remembered, he had been covered in blood, the blood of them men who had attacked him. And now he was somehow in what looked like a sewer. He was an emotional wreck. He had been crying his eyes out for what felt like hours, sitting in the darkness of the sewers. He wiped his eyes again, and looked around. It looked just like tunnels as far as the eye could see. There was water on the floor, and it was dark. He slowly started walking down the tunnel he was currently inside. He walked for what felt like an hour until he saw what looked like a dim reddish light in the distance. Whatever this place is, it needs some better lighting. Naruto continued making his way towards the light. As he got closer, he started feeling more and more anxious. He was getting worried about what was causing the reddish glow. Even if he was worried, his curiosity drove him to keep heading towards it, and he soon stumbled into what looked like a massive room. He looked around the room, and what he saw shocked him. At the far side of the room, massive bars rose out of the floor and up into the ceiling, forming a gigantic gate. He slowly approached the gate, ignoring the ominous feeling he was getting from the other side, and examined the gate more closely. That is when he saw at the joining of the two sides of the gate, a slip of paper with the kanji for seal in the center. Oh shit, this can't be what I think it is. Naruto's mind jumped, connecting the seal and the ominous feeling to the demon he had sealed inside himself, but before he could even open his mouth, he was interrupted by a dark voice filled with malice. I am exactly what you're thinking, you puny little fleshbag. Naruto jumped at the voice, as a giant figure came into view from the other side of the gate. Naruto looked up as the figure seemed to almost reach the roof of the chamber as it stood. He could hardly make out the entire creature, but he saw the dark reddish-orange figure. It was massive. The demon looked down at him. Naruto instantly felt afraid looking into the giant monster's red slitted eyes. They seemed to be the cause of the reddish glow. He was about to back away when he remembered his revelation about his clan, so he managed to keep himself from falling backwards. I'm surprised, fleshbag. You have more guts than I thought you would. I know you know what I am though. Naruto took a moment to fully take control of himself again. His sense of self-preservation was telling him to run, but his brain was arguing back, saying he couldn't be weak when it comes to a burden he was given to bear. A burden, am I, fleshbag? You've got yeah, well, at least I didn't get myself sealed into a baby for almost 13 years. Naruto knew it probably wasn't a good idea to torment a demon, but he couldn't help it. It was obviously his prankster side coming out. I'll curse you, Yondaime, and this stupid brat you stuck me in. I'll rip your soul out and feast on it. Naruto felt both scared and amused as he saw the fox smash itself against the bars. He was worried that the fox could break free for a moment, until he thought about how Jutsu worked, and then realized that the fox was just pissed, and he couldn't help but chuckle as he saw how worked up he could make the demon. Sadly, even through all its cursing, it still managed to hear the blonde's chuckling. How dare you laugh at the great QB, and you are nothing more than my container. The fox was growling now, but it had stopped tearing at the gate. But then again, fleshbag, that little village of yours seemed to think we were one in the same. The fox chuckled to himself as saw the blonde stiffen at the memory of how he was mistreated. There you were, an even smaller fleshbag than you are now, and that women threw you out of the orphanage, calling you a demon, and then the mob started. Oh, you were always hated, but when you got thrown out on the streets, then you started getting hunted. Naruto wanted to tell the fox to stop, but he couldn't muster up the will to. You used to cry so much when they would catch you. You would beg him to stop. You would cry as you asked what you had done. You don't seem to. Naruto was fighting back tears as the fox repeated some of the horrifying experiences of his life, but he managed to stop them from falling, and he controlled his face. Well then, fox, if it mattered so little to you, then why do you keep healing me? Why not just let me die? Oh yeah, it's cause. If I die, then you go with me, so shut the hell up. It was now the fox's turn to look stunned. It had been planning on tormenting the boy for a good while longer, but seeing as the blonde had ruined its fun with that, it started to growl. You stupid fleshbag, you are nothing to me. If it wasn't for that damn seal, I could have long ago destroyed your village. Though I am surprised by the stupidity of your precious villagers, they decided it was a smart thing to try and kill the brat with the most powerful of all demons inside of him. I can make everyone who has ever wronged you suffer, Naruto, just pull off the seal, and I can make all of your troubles disappear. The fox thought it had phrased that rather well, when all of a sudden the blonde started laughing. Oh man, you must think I'm stupid or something. I mean, remove the seal. Come on fuzzball, I've been studying Jutsu for a couple months now, and you're telling me to release you so you can take away my troubles? Wow, good try fox, but you just gave away one of your cards. The fox was confused at this when the blonde decided to speak again. You just revealed that you have been observing my entire life. I mean, that has gotta be kinda embarrassing for the most powerful of all demons, having to watch a toddler nearly die of starvation, knowing that if it dies you will too. Come on furball, I have been through a lot of shit, but you know better than anyone that I have never wanted revenge. The fox was cursing inside its mind by this point when it recalled something. I kept you alive so I wouldn't die, and as much as I hate you right now, I have to say, even I am proud of how ruthlessly you took care of those men who just attacked you. The fox grinned triumphantly as he saw the look on the boy's face instantly fall as he sunk to his knees and began sobbing again. You see, fleshbag, you're more like me than you want to admit. You didn't even notice you had killed all those men until you met eyes with the last of them. They were beneath us, and you proved your dominance. But if you use my power, it will be so much easier to show the rest of the world their place too. The fox was rather pleased with how it had managed to completely turn the conversation back in its favor as it began pushing its chakra out towards the blonde. With my power we can take our rightful place in this world. The fox was grinning at its success as he saw the boy fall farther into despair. Naruto. Both the fox and the boy looked up at this. The voice had sounded faint, but it was still there. Looking around, the fox cursed when he sensed that someone had found the boy's body and was waking him up. We will meet again, Naruto, and with time you will come seeking my power. With that, the fox's chakra began receding back into its cage. Outside Naruto's mindscape, Naruto, Kakashi had finally found the source of the scream, but he hadn't expected what he stumbled upon. Pakken had warned him that there was a heavy scent of blood in the area, which is what had caused him to yell out for the boy, but what he found had shocked him. He walked into a small clearing before a large tree and saw a field of red. There was blood all around the area. It had seeped from the ring of bodies. However, what caught his attention was the figure kneeling in the center of the bodies. If he hadn't been watching over Naruto for a long while, he might not have recognized the boy. The blonde was covered in blood. Kakashi's mind jumped to the worst conclusion as he hurried and kneeled next to the boy. Please be all right, Naruto. I have failed you so many times already. Please let me not have been too late again. Kakashi reached to the boy's neck and felt for a pulse. He waited a moment before he found it. He found that Naruto's pulse was strong, and he gently shook the boy's shoulders. Kakashi had to wait a moment before he got any sign of movement, but he hadn't expected the first thing to happen would be for the boy to take a shaky breath, collapse on himself and start sobbing. Chapter 6: History and Home. Kakashi was making his way back towards Konoha. He was walking slightly behind the young Uzumaki, and was repeatedly thanking Kami that he had managed to catch up with the blonde. He was still shocked slightly when he looked back on how he had found the blonde just a few hours earlier. The boy had been covered in blood and surrounded by bodies. He had been worried about what may have happened, and then the boy was crying and talking about how the villagers being right about him. That had upset Kakashi quite a bit, and so he had spent quite a while getting the whole story of what had occurred out of the blonde. To say Kakashi had been upset wouldn't have covered it. When he had gotten Naruto to start talking, he hadn't been expecting the boy to talk about the hateful stares he would get. Looking back at the conversation, Kakashi thought that Naruto probably hadn't even really been talking to him, but more ranting, because he had finally reached a point where he couldn't take any more emotional abuse. So Kakashi had listened to Naruto talk about how the villagers had always mistreated him, going so far as chasing him down with mobs. He talked about the academy and how almost all the teachers kicking him out of class if he had asked questions. When Naruto's rant had caught up to the present time, and he had talked about what had happened with the bandits, Kakashi was torn between being worried for Naruto's safety and being impressed with how well Naruto had managed to deal with the life and death situation. He had been shocked when Naruto continued to talk about the fox and how it had claimed that he was a demon just like it. That had freaked Kakashi out. Hearing that Naruto had conversed with the Kyuubi, but he had been more concerned with calming Naruto down at the time than the demon talking with the boy. It had taken quite a while, but he had managed to help calm Naruto down, to the point where they could talk. He had explained to the blonde that they were shinobi, and they were trained from a young age to kill. It was their job, and sadly the academy isn't really capable of preparing a person for the first time they are forced to do so. Only recently had he asked Naruto what he had meant by the village dishonoring the memory of his clan. What Naruto told him only angered him. Further, I can't believe how far the village has strayed. How can we wear their symbol and still hold our heads high? Kakashi had only listened to the boy's explanations, and remained silent. That brought him up back to now, the two shinobi walking in silence. As the two walked, Naruto was still going over the last 24 hours in his head. He had ran away from the village, killed 6 men, met the demon sealed within himself and was now being escorted back by a man named Hitaki Kakashi. He was feeling better than he had been before he spoke with the masked man, but was still feeling guilty about killing the men. He had realized after speaking with Kakashi that the demon had probably just been trying to corrupt him or something, but he still was working on fully coming to terms with the fact that he had ended several men's lives. Stupid freaking fox, with all the crap I'm already dealing with, it had to try and mess with me now. When the two crossed one of the streams on the route back to the village, Naruto took some time to wash as much of the blood out of his clothes as he could. As he looked over himself, he knew that it was officially the end for his signature orange jumpsuit. He had torn up his jacket before he had initially ran away, because it had been given to him by the old man, but after reading about his clan he couldn't wear it, so he took his clan's emblem from it, and left the jacket behind. As for the rest of his outfit, his pants had dozens of cuts in them, and were now stained with quite a bit of blood. He sighed at losing the outfit that had become his trademark, but he accepted it. I guess I can always just use the Henge no Jutsu when I go out and buy some new clothes. Well, either that, or I can just ask Iruka-sensei to come with me. I'm not going with the old man, that's for sure. Thinking of the man he had viewed as his surrogate grandfather made Naruto feel betrayed once again, but pushed that thought aside for the moment. Hitaki-san, did you know Uzumaki Kushina? Naruto had decided that based on Kakashi's reaction to what he told him about the Uzumaki histories, and what had happened to them, Kakashi at least knew about the Uzumaki, so he figured it couldn't hurt to ask about his mother. He figured there was a chance that he might not tell him anything, but if he had known his mother he had to ask. Kakashi was slightly surprised by the sudden question. After all, aside from asking to stop for a few minutes to get clean some blood off himself, Naruto hadn't spoken for almost half an hour. Kakashi stayed silent for a moment, considering how he should answer the blonde's question. Naruto was shocked that Kakashi had decided to answer his questions, and decided to take this opportunity to learn everything about the woman who had brought him into the world. I want to know everything you can tell me about her, what she was like, her hobbies, the stuff she liked. Kakashi was wondering just how much he had gotten himself into when he offered to tell the boy about his mother. After all, he was never one for talking about lost comrades, especially when it was related to anyone close to his old sensei. Alright Naruto, I'll tell you what I know, but try and remember that I don't know everything. After all, she was quite a bit older than me. Sigh, well, where to start? Kakashi and Naruto kept walking for a few minutes in silence, Naruto struggling to maintain his patience as Kakashi went through all that he had known about his old sensei's wife. Well Naruto, your mother was well known for her looks. She had violet eyes, and she had the red hair that was often considered a trademark of those from the Uzumaki clan. You were actually a lot like her, Naruto. From what I heard when she was younger, she was also really stubborn and impulsive. By the time I got to know her, she was more level-headed, but she had a temper, and she wasn't someone you wanted to get angry. I remember a time, actually I'll save that story for later. Kakashi stopped talking for a moment to gather his thoughts up again. He had nearly started talking about Kushina and the Yondava, but he composed himself and started talking again. Anyhow, your mother became well known for her Fuinjutsu skills, as well as her Kenjutsu skills. She was also rather skilled when it came to Taijutsu. She became well known for beating anyone who would stand up against her to a pulp with her fists. Kakashi paused and looked over at Naruto to see how the blonde was dealing with all that he was hearing, and he was pleased to see the boy was smiling slightly. Now, I don't know a lot about your mother's childhood, but from what I know, I believe she was sent to Konoha to train at the academy slightly before her home village was destroyed. I assume she was sent there to keep her out of danger. Sadly though, the rest of her clan perished, and her original home was destroyed, so she remained in Konoha. She was fiercely proud of her clan, and I know she was looking forward to being your mother. I only met her when I was 11, she was a remarkable woman, and it was truly a loss for the village when she died. At this, Naruto looked down and held back some tears he felt growing in his eyes. He had decided he would be strong for his clan, and now he knew who his mother was. He was happy to hear that he had taken after her in a lot of ways, and was slightly upset that he didn't look anything like her. I bet I would have looked cool with red hair. Hitaki-san, do you know if there are any of my family's clan scrolls in the village? I would like to honor the memory of my clan, and the memory of my mother, so if there are any of my family's scrolls in the village I would like to see them. Naruto had wanted to ask the Hokage about them, but he wasn't sure whether or not the Hokage would give him anything from his family. After all, the Hokage had denied any knowledge of his family his entire life. I'm not sure, Naruto. I believe that when your mother came to Konoha she only brought a few scrolls with her, but I'm sure that the Hokage would have those. Any other scrolls would probably still be in the ruins of her old village, but I would guess they might have all been stolen by now. Naruto sighed at this. He had already decided he was going to visit the ruins of UZU someday. Now he just had another reason to do so. He wasn't happy about it, but he was going to ask the old man for his mother's scrolls. Now that Naruto knew, the two guards told the pair to make their way to the Hokage Tower to report their success, and that they would be free to go about their business. After that, the glare Naruto received from the civilians as they made their way through the village did not go unnoticed to either of the two shinobi. Kakashi sighed when he saw the way the villagers looked at Naruto and was about to say something to reassure the boy when Naruto did something he wouldn't have expected. Naruto saw all the villagers staring at him with their hate-filled eyes, and he tried to hold down his upset at it. Stupid villagers, why can't they see me as the prison instead of the monster inside? No, that's it. If they're going to do this, I'll give them a reason to worry. How stupid can a village be, thinking it's a smart idea to antagonize and torture a person who holds the demon who destroyed their villagers? Naruto used his chakra to create a field of immense pressure in the surrounding area. It wasn't anything like the ki that many shinobi make use of to intimidate and get an upper hand on their opponents. It was just pressure. The civilians glaring at Naruto felt themselves freeze in place. If you asked any of them how they had felt, they would have said that it was like the air was trying to push them to the ground, but the same force was also holding them in place. The only reaction that Naruto got from the villagers was their hate-filled eyes turning to shock as well as worry. He met eyes with one of the villagers, and smirked slightly at the look of shock in the man's eye. Let's go, Naruto. We can't keep Hokage-sama waiting. Kakashi wasn't sure if he should reprimand Naruto for what he had done or not. Strictly speaking, shinobi weren't supposed to use their powers on civilians, but then again, most shinobi haven't spent their entire lives running from hordes of civilians trying to string him up. Naruto sighed and his expression shifted from a smirk to a blank face. Very well, Hitaki-san, let's not keep the Hokage waiting. Naruto stopped, releasing his chakra, and turned away from the villagers, following after Kakashi. The masked shinobi led the blonde to the Hokage Tower without further incident. The pair made their way up the staircase and quickly found themselves before the doorway to the Hokage's office. After Kakashi spoke briefly with the secretary, she told them that they should head right in. Kakashi raised a fist and knocked on the door twice quickly before they received word to enter. As they walked into the room, the door swung shut behind the pair, and Naruto looked upon the one man whom he had always trusted. The man who he had viewed as his grandfather, and the first person who he had ever truly trusted. For the first time in Naruto's life, the sight of the Hokage made Naruto angry. He had been betrayed by the man he had trusted most, and no matter what justification the old man might have, Naruto just couldn't forgive him. The Hokage had let out a sigh of relief earlier when he got word from Kakashi that he was returning with Naruto, but he was worried of the state the boy would be in when they returned. He now had the young blonde standing before him, and he knew something was very wrong. He quickly signaled that the Anbu leave his office, and turned back to Kakashi and Naruto. Hitaki-san, I appreciate how well you carried out your task. I am very grateful that you have brought Naruto back to us. Of course, Hokage-sama, I was just happy that Naruto was not injured when I caught up with him. Though there was much that will need to be put in the report, though it would be better for Naruto to explain all that happened himself. The Hokage sighed as he looked from Kakashi to Naruto. He was worried about how Kakashi was acting, and was even more worried about what it was that happened to Naruto, but right now was the time for him to be the Hokage, and he needed Naruto to explain why he had left like he did. Uzumaki, Naruto, I do hope you realize the seriousness of your actions last night. It is not permitted for a shinobi to simply leave the village without authorization. What reason do you have for acting as you did? The Hokage had spoken with a harsh tone, but was truly concerned for the boy. No one knew better that how much the child had suffered, and he wanted to fix whatever caused the issue as quickly as possible. I am confused, Hokage-sama. As soon as Naruto said Hokage-sama, Sarutobi knew things were far worse than he feared. As far as I am Aware, I broke no such law. Seeing as I have yet to be listed in the official shinobi record book of Konohagakure, I am not officially a shinobi, and as such I am not subject to any laws prohibiting my movement. To say the Hokage and Kakashi were shocked would be an understatement. Thankfully for Kakashi's sake, he had his mask to cover the lower half of his face, but the Hokage was staring at Naruto with his jaw hitting the floor. Was that Naruto, just spouting off village laws, and using technicalities to get out of trouble? What? This was the train of thought both men had, but sadly the thought didn't last as Naruto once again opened his mouth to speak. On the other hand, the village council, and by extension the whole of Konohagakure, has betrayed, and dishonored the memory of their allies the Uzumaki, and Uzashigakure. When Naruto spoke, the Hokage could hear the anger coming from the boy. What do you mean, Naruto? Don't try it, Hokage-sama. I found out about Kushina, and I know you've been lying to me about her my whole life, and I know about the Uzumaki clan as well. I want my family scrolls, old man. They are mine by birthright, and I don't know why you decided to get rid of practically everything there was on the history of my clan, but as of this moment, the village hidden in the leaves is forbidden from using my clan symbol as penalty for betraying the trust my clan placed in them. The Hokage was once again floored by what Naruto had said. He was confused by Naruto saying he had gotten rid of the village's information about the Uzumaki clan, and he wasn't sure what he could say in defense when it came to Kushina. He had wanted the boy to learn about her on his own, because of the council interfering with him, but he didn't know how it caused the boy to react like this. The thing the boy had said that worried the Hokage most was him revoking the right to wear the Uzumaki spiral. He couldn't even begin to think about what an uproar that would cause in the council, and with the general shinobi population. Naruto, please be reasonable. I know I should have told you about Kushina earlier, but I had my reasons for keeping it from you. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't. Save it, old man. You're the Hokage, the most powerful man in the village. If you wanted to tell me about my mother, you could have. I want my family scrolls, and I want the shinobi to stop wearing my clan symbol by the time of team assignments. Hiruzen had been surprised by the blonde many times in his life, but what the boy was saying now had to be the most surprising things he had ever heard from the boy. He could hear the hurt, pain, anger and betrayal felt in the boy's voice, and he could do nothing but hang his head in shame. He knew he had lost something very important this day, something that would be nearly impossible to get back. He had lost the trust of the boy who he had viewed as family. Naruto, I'm so sorry. The Hokage took a few minutes to compose himself before he unlocked one of the drawers of his desk, and pulled out a scroll and placed it on the table. It was not large, but it had the Uzumaki symbol on it, and Naruto could make out a storage seal on the scroll. He also noticed a few other markings on the seal, and concluded that it must be a blood seal, meaning that only he should be able to open it. He looked back up at the man who he had trusted and spoke again. And quote, Don and Arpos, T worry Hokage-sama, your Jinchuriki ISN and Arpos. T planning on running away again. But I don't and Arpos. T plan on taking all that crap from the villages anymore. I and Arpos. D recommend you keep the council away from me. After all, they should realize that it and Arpos. It's not a good idea to antagonize the one person inside the village that if you piss off too much could quite literally let loose a demon on them. And quote. The Hokage could only look down at his feet as Naruto turned and exited the office. He just stood there for a few minutes before Kakashi spoke to him, and quote. Hokage-sama, are you alright? Should I go bring Naruto back here? And quote. No, Kakashi, Naruto was entirely correct. As he is not yet listed in the official shinobi record, I am not allowed to restrict his movement. What happened out there? Naruto wasn't sure how much time had passed while he was in bed, but eventually he calmed down and sat up. Well, I guess I should take a look into the scroll and see what's in there. Naruto stood up and walked back into his living room. He sat down on the couch and pulled the scroll out of his pocket. Looking at it closely, it looked far more intricate than it had when he took it from the Hokage. He had initially just noticed the blood seal on it, with the Uzumaki crest. Now though, he saw that the entire scroll was decorated with intricate spirals blending into one another. Just the look of it was entrancing, made him think of water swirling through itself, an endless whirling tide. Slowly he took a breath and bit his finger. He rubbed some blood on the seal and channeled his chakra into it. The scroll that fit comfortably in his hand started to expand till it was around half the size of the forbidden scroll. He was surprised by this, but he figured it was just an expansion seal. He had read about them briefly, but there wasn't a whole lot of information on them in the village, so he hoped that there would be something on them in the scroll. As he unrolled the scroll, a sheet of paper fell out of it onto the floor. He read the first line, and was shocked to see it was addressed to him. Naruto, if you are reading this, then it means I'm not there with you to teach you all about our clan. I'm so sorry for leaving you, and I hope you know I wish I didn't do it. Your father and I decided that when we found out I was pregnant that we should each write you a letter in case we're not there for you. I don't know how I died, but I'm so sorry, I didn't get to watch you grow up. I was so looking forward to seeing you become a splendid shinobi. I hope you know that your father and I love you more than anything else. You are our greatest gift, and I really hope that you have your father around so he can tell you all about me. I'm pretty sure that if you're reading this that he gave it to you. This scroll is what my father gave me when they sent me to Konoha to keep me away from the war. I never had the heart to return home after my family was lost, so I don't know if there are any of our scrolls left there, but this scroll has a lot of our family teachings in it. I know you might want to learn everything your father has to teach you, but the Uzumaki clan techniques are some of the best in the world. I really hope you don't ever have to read this letter, Naruto-kun, but I want you to know that I will always be proud of you no matter what, and that I love you, and even if I'm not there to tell you, you should know how loved you are. Kushina. P.S. Find a great girl just like your mom Naruto, and don't only eat ramen, as delicious as it is, you should eat more than just that, otherwise you'll stunt your growth. Naruto had reached the end of the letter and was holding back tears from his eyes. He was holding in his hands a letter, written to him by his mother. He wasn't sure how to feel about what he had read. He had wished that his mother had told him about his father, but he figured that she thought that if she had died he would still be around. He spent the next half hour going over the letter a few more times, reaffirming everything he had read. He had spoken to Kakashi about his mother, but reading his mother's letter made her seem far more real to him. She had had hopes. And she had had dreams for him. She had wanted to be there for him while he grew up, and she even wrote in the letter, "I promise I'll make you proud, Mom. And I will rebuild our clan, and make it stronger than ever, TKoW." Naruto folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer beside his bed. He then returned to the living room, and began looking through the Uzumaki scroll. Well, let's what's in here. To learn, Naruto spent the next hour going over all the different things on the scroll. As he guessed earlier, the scroll was full of seals containing additional scrolls. He found some scrolls on different types of seals, including the seal that increased and decreased the size of the scroll itself. He was shocked at the sheer number of scrolls that the one scroll contained. He continued searching through the scrolls, until he stumbled upon one of the things he had been looking for. He saw the Uzumaki family taijutsu scrolls. He dropped everything else and began reading through the forms of Fudoken, the floating fist. He wasn't sure how long he studied the forms, but he was brought out of his studying when his stomach started rumbling. He sighed as he set the scrolls down and moved over to his kitchen and began preparing some food for himself. He spent the next few minutes standing before his stove cooking himself dinner. Kakashi had been crouching in one of Naruto's windows and watched as the boy went to cook some food. He was feeling a bit hungry himself, but after he had been dismissed from the Hokage's office he had come straight to Naruto's apartment, and had arrived to find Naruto going through the scrolls on his table. He watched out of curiosity for a while, and decided he would wait to get food till he spoke with Naruto. He just wasn't sure how exactly he should approach the boy. He was running through ideas when he saw Naruto walk back into the room and place two bowls on the table. After sealing the majority of scrolls back into the main scroll, Kakashi was surprised when he heard Naruto speak up. "So Hataki-san, are you going to come in, or are you just going to just sit there watching me for another hour?" Kakashi nearly fell off the windowsill, but managed to catch himself and stepped in and sat at the table. "How did you notice me, Naruto? I made sure I was silent. I've always been good at figuring out when people are watching me. Also, a grown man sitting in my window frame isn't that difficult to see. I mean, you didn't even really bother to hide yourself. So what would you like, Hataki-san? Did the Hokage send you to drag me back because of my attitude?" Kakashi sat down across from the table, and thanked Naruto for the food before he started speaking again. "No, Naruto, I decided I should come by and see how you were doing. I know how much you care about the Hokage, and I figured that you must be upset after what happened." Naruto remained silent while Kakashi spoke. He focused mainly on his food, and was once again very grateful he had learned how to cook for himself. One of the many plus sides he had discovered about cooking for himself is that he could eat whenever he wanted without having to go buy food. "Well, I'm fine, Hataki-san. I'm just going through my family's scrolls." "I see. Well, I think you should know that I told the Hokage everything that you told me after I found you. But aside from that, if you would like any help with the scrolls, I can offer some assistance. I may not be an Uzumaki, but I did see your mother fight several times." Naruto wasn't at all surprised to hear that the man had told the Hokage everything, so he decided to comment on it. He was interested in seeing if The man would be able to help him at least figure out some of the basics for his mother's taijutsu style. Well, since you offered, do you think you could help me with some of the basics of my mother's taijutsu style? It is really complicated. Kakashi cringed at that. If there was one thing he doubted he'd be able to help with, it was the Uzumaki taijutsu style. He had tried to study it with his Sharingan once, but Kushina had beaten him to a pulp, saying he wasn't allowed to learn the style. If she was anything, she was very protective of her family history. Actually that's one of the few things I can't really help with. Kakashi saw the blonde's face fall and sighed, knowing he'd have to call in a big favor for what he was about to say. However, I do happen to know the village's resident taijutsu master, and I'm sure I could convince him to help you work on it, but I have to warn you, he is a bit extreme. Naruto perked up at Kakashi's words. He'd introduce him to the village's taijutsu master. Well, that had to be good. He only hoped that whoever the guy was, he wasn't too insane, but then again he figured he could handle whatever the guy could throw at him. Naruto and Kakashi spoke for a little while longer, before Kakashi asked Naruto to meet him near one of the training grounds the next morning at 5. So he could introduce him to the village's taijutsu master. The blonde was ecstatic to think about learning his family's style, and after Kakashi told him about how his mother had quite literally beaten him into the ground. After Kakashi left, Naruto sealed all the scrolls back into the main Uzumaki scroll, and locked it into his nightstand and put a locking seal on it. It would only react to his chakra, so he figured it would be safe there for now, and he'd create a more secure seal for it later. After all, he finally had something of his family's, and he wasn't going to let anyone take it away from him. Naruto quickly went to sleep, dreaming about the next morning and training. If only he knew what it would really be like, then those dreams would have been more like nightmares. Chapter 7 Dreamers. Naruto was on his way towards the training ground Kakashi had specified the night before. He hadn't gotten a full night's sleep, because in his sleep he had relived killing the bandits over and over again. If he had to guess, he would have said it was the fox trying to mess with him, but because he had no way of stopping it, after a few hours he had given up and had gone back to studying his family's scroll. He had made the chief focus of his studies for Dokkan. He figured he should at least try and start working on the katas that formed the style before he met with the villagers taijutsu master, and so he had spent the majority of the night working on that. As of now it was nearly 4:30 in the morning. He figured it wouldn't hurt to be a little early. He figured that if the taijutsu master arrived to find him already training, he might be more inclined to help him, because it just showed how dedicated he was to his training. Naruto was still having a bit of trouble moving at his full speeds because of how much he had increased his weights by the day before. He was directing a bit more chakra than usual to his limbs to help ease the stress on his muscles, but he still wanted to get the maximum benefit of using his weights, and he wasn't entirely sure if the chakra would slow down how fast he got used to the weights. One of the things he had noticed though was the increased destructive power of his punches and kicks when he fueled them with chakra. He related it back to when he had learned tree walking. It had been a lot of trial and error trying to find the exact amount of chakra required to walk on the trees. He had been working on the tree climbing exercise for nearly 3 weeks when he finally lost it after he once again slipped off the tree. His solution had been to gather as much chakra as possible at his feet, and he ran at the tree. The first thing he should have noticed was how fast he was going. The second thing should have been the large imprints he was making in the ground. However, all his attention was directed at the tree he was intent on climbing. He swore he would remember what happened next for the rest of his life. He planted his foot on the tree, and in a split second he knew that it wasn't going to end well. As he was about to push off to try and make another step, the tree was blasted apart. Naruto found himself being shot through the air, but his eyes were stuck on the tree, which was now beginning to fall over, due to the large chunk that had apparently been blown off of it. He had been so shocked by what he had just done, he barely registered the fact that the tree was falling towards him. Thankfully, he had good enough reaction time to get out of. The blonde began his warm-up with 15 minutes of stretching. He wanted to make sure he would be able to do whatever the taijutsu master suggested, and he had learned very early in his training how important stretching was to a successful workout. After finishing his stretches, Naruto summoned a few clones to work on chakra control, and went for a run around the clearing. He finished his run and still had a few minutes before he was supposed to meet the Kakashi and his friends, so he decided to have a light spar with his clones while he waited. He had only just begun to get into his spar when he began hearing shouting in the distance. He was initially unnerved, but as soon as it became clear that the shouts were not pained or strained, he focused back on his spar. He grew slightly worried when he noticed that the voices were getting closer and hoped that whoever it was wasn't going to bother him. Naruto decided to just ignore what he now recognized as 2 voices, and completely focused on his spar. He couldn't afford to get distracted in his spar. If he wanted to get the most benefit out of it, he needed to give the fight his full attention, or at least he tried to give the fight his full attention. The voices he had just heard were closer, much closer. The pair both had the same black bowl-cut hair. The taller one was wearing a flak vest. They were both wearing bright orange leg warmers, and the shorter one was wearing bandages around his forearms and hands. The pair was both wearing their Hitai 8 around their waists. The next thing that caught his attention was the bright green one-piece spandex jumpsuits. He tore his eyes up from the horrible jumpsuits and his eyes caught sight of something even more horrifying. Eyebrows. Naruto was so shocked by the humongous eyebrows that the pair had he jumped backwards and smashed into a tree. Naruto took a second to steady himself as he stood back up. He took a deep breath and looked back towards the pair of clones and waited for them to say something. The pair just looked at the blonde-haired t-shirt wearing Jinan. After a minute of silence, the shorter of the two spoke up. Guy-sensei, this silence is killing me. I will begin my morning workout. This seemed to catch the older man's attention as he blinked and turned towards the younger spandex-wearing shinobi. Yosh, Lee, you will start with a run around the village. On your hands. Thank you, sensei. If I cannot complete this task in 15 minutes, I will do 500 push-ups. With that, the shinobi identified as Lee flipped onto his hands and took off towards the outer wall of the village. Naruto was trying to understand the insanity he had just witnessed when the man named Guy turned to him. So, who are you that is training so youthfully this fine morning? Naruto just stared at the man. What? I see, our most youthful arrival must have startled you. I am Mito Guy, the one who just left is my most youthful student, Rock Lee. Now my new, youthful friend, who are you? Naruto once again took his time to compose himself before speaking. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, village pariah, and I'm here to meet somebody. Naruto was getting more and more worried the longer he spent with Guy. He was worried he had misheard which training ground he had been supposed to meet Kakashi at, because it was now a few minutes after 5 and shinobi were all drilled in how important punctuality was. Ah, I see, who is it who told you to meet up with him at this most youthful time in our training ground? Naruto had been in his own world trying to think of why Kakashi might not be there to meet him and was worried that he had been tricked again. What did you say? Whatever the reaction Naruto expected from the older shinobi, he hadn't expected what he saw. Guy's face seemed to convulse, and his eyes seemed to be replaced with fires. Ah, you two have that unyouthful hip and cool attitude, just like Kakashi. Naruto however only heard the name Guy mentioned. Wait, you know Hitaki Kakashi? He told me to meet him here at 5. So you do know my legendary rival Kakashi-san? No wonder you have that darned hip and cool attitude. I have known Kakashi for years, though I am sorry to say, young Naruto, Kakashi has the most unyouthful tendency of always being horribly late. However, if you would like, you are more than welcome to train with Lee and I until he arrives. Naruto was a bit unsure of if he really wanted to be training with the eccentric shinobi he had just met, but he did have to admit that the man and his student were fast, and as insane as the pair seemed, they also appeared to be fond of pushing themselves to the limits. Sure, it can't hurt. I just hope the guy Hitaki-san wanted me to meet isn't as slow as he is. I see, so who is it that my rival wanted you to meet? Well, he was telling me about how he knew someone who could help me work on my family's taijutsu style, because he wasn't able to himself. He said that the guy was supposed. Naruto was panicking now. From what he could understand from the madman's yelling, this was the man who Kakashi said was the village taijutsu master. He was having a lot of trouble believing that someone as seemingly insane. Thankfully, Guy didn't seem like he was doing much, aside from running around the training grounds at nearly impossible speeds. He watched as Guy burned off his newfound burst of energy. Not that Naruto thought the man would ever need excess energy. It took nearly 10 minutes for the green-clad man to seem to realize he'd been running in circles shouting about his youthful success, and finally calmed down enough to speak again with Naruto. So my youthful rival sent you to seek me out. What style did he say I would be able to assist you with learning? It's called Fudokan. It is my clan's taijutsu style. Guy looked lost in thought for a few moments before he finally spoke. Fudokan, the lost taijutsu style of the Uzumaki clan, you were definitely right in seeking me out to assist you with learning it. There are not many taijutsu masters left today who could help one learn the style. Wait, so you'll teach me? TKoW. Naruto was exceptionally excited at the news that he'd have a teacher who could help him with his style. Hold on there a second, my youthful acquaintance. It is true that I would be able to help you learn the style, but you still haven't given me reason to help you. Why should I assist you in this? Despite my interest in the legendary taijutsu style of your clan, I still do not know if you have the will and perseverance to train under me. Naruto was caught off guard by the sudden change to a serious attitude from the Spandex clan shinobi and braced himself mentally as he prepared. His response: I know you don't really have any reason to help me, and I won't really be surprised if you say you won't, but I will learn my family's style one way or another. I need to if I'm going to be able to achieve my dreams, TKoW. So if you're not going to help me, then fine, I'll master it on my own, and I will restore my clan without anyone's help. Naruto hadn't meant to let himself get so passionate in his response, but he couldn't help but remember all the times back at the academy when the teachers had kicked him out of class for asking questions, or when they would purposefully make him look worse in the eyes of the other students to humiliate him. If this person was going to be like they all had been, he wanted to know now so that he could do it on his own. It might be difficult, but he had sworn to restore his clan, and make the world remember them, so with or without this man's help he would achieve his goals. Naruto was about to turn away from the man when he saw streams of tear running down the man's face. The man opened his voice to speak, when the person mentioned to be Rock Lee burst through the trees once again. Guy-sensei, you must help him, I can tell that the fires of youth burn brightly within him. He is fighting to protect his precious people, and he is working to achieve his dreams. If you do not help him, Guy-sensei, I will do handstand push-ups until you change your mind. Naruto was unnerved by the sudden appearance and declaration on his behalf from the other young shinobi, and was truly touched that he had spoken on his behalf. He was shocked that Lee immediately got on his hands and began counting off. Naruto and Guy just stared at him for a few moments until Guy spoke up. Get up, Lee. If Naruto's declaration hadn't been enough to convince me, you supporting him just helped his cause even more. Lee, Naruto couldn't believe what he was hearing. For the majority of his life he had had people spitting on him, and doing everything they could to stop him from reaching his dreams, and he had found another pair who wanted to help him achieve his dreams. Soon the pair all had streams of tears running down their faces as they cheered for their oncoming successors. Several minutes later, Lee and Naruto were heading out of the training grounds for another warm-up run around the village. Guy had spent the last few minutes trying to convince Naruto to wear one of the green jumpsuits as well, but Naruto had held strong against Guy and Lee's protestations of how beneficial they were. Naruto figured that he had recently come to terms with getting rid of his orange jumpsuit. He wasn't about to jump in what he believed to be an even more ridiculous outfit. Sighing defeated, Guy had suggested that Naruto and Lee do a few laps around the village to get to know each other while he studied Naruto's taijutsu scrolls. He told them they would spar afterwards so they could start to understand one another, but he thought it would be good for the two to speak for a while as well. Naruto and Lee had been running for a few minutes when Naruto spoke up. Lee, I am Uzumaki Naruto. I wanted to say thanks for standing up for me with your sensei. I'm not used to people doing that sort of thing for me, so thanks. You do not have to worry about it, Naruto. I could tell you two are a person who values hard work over natural ability, and I could tell that you would strive for your dreams one way or another, so if I can, I would like to help you reach your goals. I too am a person who knows the importance of hard work, and as such I feel that we could be great friends. Naruto was still having trouble getting used to the enthusiasm that Guy and Lee seemed to put into all their speech, but hearing Lee say that he thought they could be friends meant more to Naruto than he would admit. He had never really had any true friends. Back at the academy he had a one-sided rivalry with Sasuke, and he had a crush of Sakura, not that he'd seen her and quote, yes Naruto, we will be a force to be reckoned with. Come now, we must not keep Guy-sensei waiting. Unquote. Yeah, let an Arpose. Go Lee. Unquote. Naruto wasn't an Arpose. Sure when he started shouting, but he was fired up to train like never before, and the two blasted around the village at speeds that shocked anyone who was out to see what they were doing. The pair chatted about their time at the academy, and Naruto and Lee realized that they had a lot in common. Naruto was surprised to hear about Lee and Arpo's condition, which made it impossible for him to mold chakra for jutsu, and was really impressed that Lee hadn't an Arpose. Allowed that to get in the way of his dream, and had just focused all his efforts on his taijutsu. Lee also told him about his rival Hyuga Neji, who like Naruto and Arpo's old rival Sasuke was viewed as a genius from a young age, and how he wanted to prove that he didn't an Arpose need to be a genius to be a great ninja, he just needed to dedicate himself to improving and becoming stronger. As they ran they also talked about a lot of the training they had done, and Lee was ecstatic to hear that Naruto also trained with weights. He suggested that Naruto show the weights to Guy when they make it back to the training ground so he can gauge how his weight training was progressing. Back in the clearing with Guy was sitting on one of the training posts going over the scrolls for the Fudokan style. He had only curse your hip and cool attitude Kakashi, you won an R-pose. Get the better of me. And quat. Guy was brought out of his small rant by Kakashi and R-pose, chuckles and turned back to face the masked man, and quat. So Kakashi, I met Naruto, I am going to try and help him on his youthful journey, it won an R-pose. Be easy, but I believe he will be up for the task. And quat. I hope so, but you an R-pose. Read the person who an R-pose, most likely to be able to help him learn the style. I may have gotten on the wrong side of it a few times, let an R-pose, just say I wasn't an R-pose. Too happy of the idea of having to be a practice dummy for Naruto and R-pose, training. And quat. I get it Kakashi, you want him in the best hands possible, they're an R-pose, nothing unyouthful about that, just talking to him helps rev up my own fires of youth. Don an R-pose, you worry Kakashi, I an R-pose, LL make him a master of that style, and that an R-pose, SA promise. And quat. Guy struck a pose with a blindingly brilliant smile, and thumbs up. Kakashi sweat dropped at this, but ended up chuckling. And quat. Okay Guy, I an R-pose. LL hold you to that. And quat. With Naruto and Lee the pair had nearly made it back to the training ground when Lee asked Naruto about his clan. He had heard Naruto mention his clan and R-pose, taijutsu style, and early he had heard Naruto talk about how he was going to bring back his clan. So for the remainder of their run Naruto told Lee of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto wasn't an R-pose. Used to being so open with people so it was a bit odd for him to be talking about his clan with someone, but he was grateful that he had someone near his own age who he could talk to about his family. Lee was very impressed by what Naruto told him about the Uzumaki clan. He offered his condolences when Naruto told him about how his clan had perished, and swore he would help Naruto with his training whenever he was able. As the two made their way back into the clearing they saw Guy standing facing away from him, and quat. Guy sent, right you are my pupil, my old rival just stopped by to wish us luck in our training. He said he was sorry he couldn't wait around, but he had an important mission he had to get to. Naruto was pleased that Kakashi hadn't turned out to just have been tricking him, and was a bit sad that he hadn't been able to thank him, but he assumed he would see him around the village again and could thank him then. Oh, Guy-sensei, I just recalled it turns out that Naruto also uses weights in his training. I thought it would be good to inform you so you can gauge his progress with them. Naruto sighed at the mention of his weights. He had finally gotten his movements back to normal on his run with Lee, and he was worried what Guy might have him do with the weights. I knew that the fires of youth burned through you Naruto. Tell me, what sort of weights do you use? I use chakra weights. They aren't bulky like regular weights so I like them I guess. May I see these weights of yours Naruto? Naruto detached the weights from his ankles and wrists and carefully passed them to Guy. He didn't want the weight of the slim metal bands to catch the man by surprise. However, he was surprised when Guy just lifted the weights and started juggling them. Well Naruto, these are most youthful, however, I am sure you can get more benefit with a little more weight. Naruto could have sworn there was a slightly sadistic smirk in the man's voice if it wasn't for the smile that seemed to radiate his honesty. Naruto only shrugged and said, I guess I could use some more weight. Guy nodded approvingly and channeled some chakra into the weights before tossing them all back at Naruto. The blonde however hadn't been paying his full attention and had the air knocked out of him as he fell to the ground struggling under the new and seemingly exponentially increased weights. Naruto couldn't even ask if the guy was crazy when it came to the weights, but sadly was dragged out of his musings by Guy telling him to put back on his weights and having his most youthful spar with Lee. Naruto struggled to stand under the new weight and slowly stomped over towards the waiting Lee. Naruto, do not worry, I will not go easy on you. If I am to help you reach your goals we cannot take our training lightly. The blonde smirked at this. As much as he knew how much this spar was going to suck for him he knew it could only help him on his path to achieving his goals. And quat, I would an R-pose. Want anything else Lee, show me what you an R-pose, VE got. And quat, Naruto pumped chakra through his limbs and charged at Lee. If Lee was at all surprised by Naruto going on the offensive from the start he didn't an R-pose, show it. He only smiled and met Naruto in his charge. The two began exchanging blows one after another. Naruto may have improved his taijutsu over the past few months, but Lee had dedicated the past year of his life to his taijutsu, and it didn't an R-pose. Take long for it to be apparent who had the upper hand in the spar. Naruto seeing he had the underhand in the fight channeled more chakra to his limbs and redoubled his efforts. The additional power he gained from the burst of chakra surprised Lee as he found himself getting knocked backwards by an exceptionally powerful punch. And quat, Yosh Naruto, that is spirit, show me your fires of youth, and quote. Lee redoubled his own efforts and flew back at Naruto. Lee had promised himself that he wouldn't an R pose. T used the hidden lotus technique, but that didn't an R pose. T mean he didn't an R pose. T have all the rest of his knowledge of Goken at his disposal. Naruto quickly discovered that even with the additional chakra, Lee was still stronger than he was and was once again put on the defensive. He was doing his best to dodge Lee and R pose punches and completely missed the kick directed straight at his head. He felt the impact and found himself sailing straight up in the air. He was preparing himself for the next hit when he heard Guy yell out at them, and quote, alright you two, that an R pose, enough. I am proud of how brightly the fires of youth burn within the two of you. Now Lee helped Naruto up, we have so much more serious training to get working on, and quote, Naruto and R pose apartment. A week later Naruto rolled himself out of his bed and hit the floor with a thud. Ever since he had started training with Guy and Lee a week ago, he had found Hediden and R pose need his alarm clock as much. He had only started working on his family's taijutsu style a few days earlier because he needed to have perfected water walking before he could begin learning the style. Apparently all his ancestors had to master their taijutsu style on water before they could learn it on land. Guy had explained in detail the reasons why, but it still didn't make it any happier when he was told he wasn't allowed to use his family's style until he had at least mastered the first few forms. He had also met the other members of Lee's team in the past week. He liked Tenten well enough, she was nice, and unlike most of the girls he had met in the academy, she actually seemed dedicated on improving herself as a kunoichi, and didn't just spend her time fangirling after boys. He also liked her because she had shown him around her family's shinobi equipment store and helped him pick out his new outfit. She had also helped him improve his aim with kunai and shuriken. He had gotten better over the last 3 months, but she had given him a lot of pointers. However, Neji was another story. If he had to describe him in one word, it would be prick. He was always rambling about fate, and how he was always destined to fail. He wanted to kick his ass, but Lee had held him back until he had calmed down. But Naruto didn't want to think about Neji now. No, Naruto had more important stuff on his plate today. He was heading back to the academy for the first time in 3 months. He was looking forward to see how much he shocked everyone and how much he changed. And he was looking forward to see just what team he was going to be stuck on.
Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this what if, and please go support the creator. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. There is no like goal for this video. However, liking the video will tell me that you guys are enjoying the content. Also, commenting would really help out the channel, as I know what you guys are thinking about the channel. If you guys want something to improve or something to be done, I will do so. All the feedback is very important. And also, Discord server is in the linked in the description below. So if you want to join it and make it alive like it once was, you can. But anyways, my ducklings, you're all dismissed. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and follow the creator. And anyways, this was the King of Weebs there, and peace.